Sword of Coming Chapter 1176. Chapter 1176. There is an empty chair in the imperial palace of Dallas capital. Emperor Song he summoned the monarchs of the 5 mountains of one continent to discuss matters in the imperial study. I thought that the Nanyue woman Xuanhuan would find an excuse to shirk, but I never thought that Fan Junmao would come too. The 5 sacred mountains of Aquarius Island, except for Nanyue, the 4 great sacred mountains, because they are still in the Dali dynasty, they continue to be under the jurisdiction of the Dali Song clan in name. In fact, according to the covenant made by the national teacher Cui Yu, after the war the territory of Dali retreated to the north of Chidu, but the Zushan mountain of Dongyue Chishan was actually located to the south of Dadu. The erection of the monument is almost the same. There have been some sayings and small actions over the years. When the viewing ceremony at Xingyang Mountain is over, the descent will subside on its own. There are still about 2/4 of an hour before the agreed time. Today's morning court has not yet retreated, and His Majesty the Emperor has not yet appeared. The royal study usually belongs to the second session, with a smaller number of people, also known as the small court meeting. The first person to arrive today was not Wei Bo, the king of Beiyue Mountain who was near the water tower, but Jin Qing, the king of Zhongyue Mountain. Then came the 2 mountain kings from east and west, Mengrong in Qishan and Tong Wenchang in Ganzhou. Mengrong's golden armor sword is like a general. Tong Wenchang, dressed in linen and barefoot, looks like an old peasant with an old jasper cigarette stick attached to his waist. Then came Wei Bo, who was dressed in a snow-white robe with a pair of sneakers on his feet, a ribbon around his waist and a golden ring around his ear. Finally, Fan Junmao, wearing a dark green robe, hangs a jade plaque Jun Qingyu Xiang on his waist. She has a beautiful appearance and she is not a big beauty. Maybe standing with Wei Bo, not to mention big beauties, not even beauties. In addition to Yueshenzhen, Chidu Changchunho Yanghua, the head of the water of Aquarius. Chao Rong, the Dali dripping uncle, was second only to Yanghua in the divine position. The 2 Marquis of Dadu, who were present almost at the same time as Jin Qing, were able to chat a little, mainly Chao Rong, who was born in the Fengshui cave of Qiantang River, and chatted and laughed with Jin Shanjun. Chao Rong and Fei Zishan Jinqing have known each other for many years, and they have a good relationship. This old Jiao, who was born in the old Qiantang, often visited the borders of the old Zhuang dynasty in his early years. Jin Qing was neither a civilian or military general of the Zhuang dynasty during his lifetime, nor was he an accomplished qi practitioner, but a poor courier. Light a stick of incense and pay homage to the mountain gods. According to the custom of the couriers, if the incense stick is successfully burned, one can enter the mountain to mine inkstone materials. Whipped to death, then drown the body in water. After Jinking's death, his true spirit remained, and he was favored by Zhongyue Laoshenzhen of the old Zhuang dynasty. He first helped Jinqing stabilize his soul, and then arranged a land temple to shape the golden body. After that, he was promoted and promoted continuously. Jinqing finally did when it came to Daizhang Peak Mountain God, who was enshrined by Zhuang Duga's court. When Lao Shanjun suffered an accident and his golden body was broken, Jin Qing successfully succeeded the Shanjun and became the lord of Jizi Mountain. After chatting about some anecdotes and trivial matters, Chao Rong asked with a smile, "Jin Shanjun, I heard that Wei Shanjun's self-made name is Lingza?" Jin Qing nodded and said, "If I knew this earlier, I would report to the Ministry of Rites for a night tour divine name. Wei Shanjun is not authentic in his work, so wouldn't he be when he blocks the pit?" Chao Rong said, "Several night tours and banquets in the Zishan mountain have been held very impressively, and the mountain is well known." Jin Qing snorted, "We all learned from Wei Shanjun. We are all students about how to do the night tour banquet." Chao Rong burst out laughing. The Ho Yanghua of Changchun of Dadu remained silent. She was closing her eyes and resting, with the horizontal sword on her knees, and gently rubbing the string of golden sword spikes in her hand. As a rule, high-ranking gods participated in the discussion, and the Dali court allowed them to wear armor and swords to go to the temple. There are only 3 of them in the house for now. In fact, whether it is Jin Qing or Chao Rong, they look at Yanghua, who is in the second rank of the gods. In their hearts, they actually treat her as a little girl who is ignorant of the world. Indeed, Yanghua's qualifications are too shallow, her resume is too thin, and luck is too good. At that time, just because she was the personal maid of the Queen Mother Nanpin, she was able to become the water goddess of the Iron Fu River in the old Longzhou. When the war ended, she went to Dadu to fill the gap. Did she ever do anything practical? What credit? On the other hand, Jin Qing, who is the same as Dadu Changchun Ho Pin rank, or Chao Rong, whose position is half a rank lower than Yanghua, or even the orthodox mountain gods of the 5 mountains, the mountain of crown princes, is no better than Yang in terms of years and prestige. Stronger flower? Therefore, every time they talk about Xuanhuan in private they are very disapproving. As for the female Shanjun Fanjunmao, she is both similar and opposite to Yanghua. The similarity means that the two sides have similar Tao age, and belong to the new faces of the mountain and water gods in one continent. On the contrary, it means that Fan Junmao was in the course of the war, made great efforts and made great contributions. As one of the 5 sacred mountains he was defeated. He once completely lost Shanjun Mansion, temples and dojos, so Fan Junmao is now on Beipingzi Mountain, which should not be underestimated. Nanyu's reputation is quite good. In addition, there are also some retainers of the 5 mountains and landscapes with a high enough status, who are eligible to attend the discussion today. Attending a non-voting session is a big difference. To put it simply, the former can speak, and the latter can participate in the discussion, which is really just participating in the discussion. The most numerous are the Chujun mountain god of the 5 mountains, and then there is the Yongjiang water god of Zhongyue. Eligible to attend, but 2 gods are temporarily vacant. Guessing the candidates for the new Taifujiang water god and Chentang chief, it is estimated that they will be discussed and approved together today. In the imperial study room, there was the eunuch, the supervisor of Li, who was in charge of the arrangement of the order, and led the gods of the mountains and rivers to their seats. Because His Majesty the Emperor has not yet had a dojo, and has already taken a seat in the house, we will talk about each other. When Wei Bo brought the 3 princes and mountain gods into the imperial study together, the atmosphere in the house suddenly became lively. In the land of Longxing, Shanjun Wei Bo belongs to the first-class close ministers of the emperor, and now in the whole world, who does not know that Piyun Mountain and Luapa Mountain are so close to wearing a pair of trousers, so some have nothing to do with that young hidden official. The mountains and rivers are gods, so I just want to have a good relationship with Wei Shanjun. In the future celebrations on the top of the mountain, not to mention inviting Qin Pingan to the ceremony, asking Wei Shanjun to help express his personal feelings, and getting a handwritten congratulatory note from Qin Pingan is always a kind of face. The icing on the cake. The content of the chat was mostly anecdotes about the landscape and the deeds of Qi practitioners. When it comes to the mastery of all kinds of stories in one continent, there is really no one who knows the basics better than them. In addition, the borders of the 5 mountains and the gods of mountains and water within the territory of Yue often have actions similar to borrowing water, or draining water. Learn from each other's strengths to make up for the shortcomings, and try to take care of the barren land where the spiritual energy is thin and the incense is not rich. When encountering natural disasters such as severe drought, floods, earthquakes, etc., especially involving some gray methods of Qi practitioners and immortal mansions on the mountain, many gods are not within the framework of arrogance and non-violation. You can communicate with your neighbors and help each other. For example, the mountain is most afraid of the ins and outs, and the opening of a dojo for Qi practitioners. If you don't talk about jianghu morality, just focus on the construction of this immortal mansion is tantamount to making a hole in the stretched body of a mountain god, and the water is most afraid of the kind of drought that is rare in 1,000 years and a once in a century. After being exposed to the sun for a long time, the riverbed will dry up, and the skin will be cracked like the commonplace in the market. In history, there was a time when the relationship between Zongmen Shenfu and Hujun was so bad that there was no room for maneuver. The former did not do anything but joined forces with the imperial courts of several countries, and simply built a seat directly upstream of a series of water-source rivers in the Great Lake. A dam was built and then the river was replaced. In just a few decades, the Great Lake dried up to the bottom, the billions of aquariums died, and the golden body of a lake monarch finally shattered. However, this kind of tragic disaster is still a special case after all. The relationship between more gods and Qi practitioners is either sincere cooperation and solidarity, or tied together by interests. No matter how bad it is, they can at least maintain a surface harmony. The gods who can sit here today are all well-deserved frontier officials on the mountain. Although there are 3, 6, 9, etc. which they know in their hearts, any mountain and water gods only need to wait until the discussion is over. They are all earth emperors in their respective jurisdictions, and they govern a large number of rivers, mountain gods, land, rivers, and city gods at all levels. Generally speaking, within the boundaries of mountains and rivers, as long as there are no sects and sects, these high-ranking gods are more comfortable. When Wei Bo entered the imperial study, there was no more talk about the excavation of Dadu and Tonggishao in the south. As for the night tour banquet, it was deliberately avoided. Who does not know that in the early years, Wei Shanjun once traveled far to the border between Beiyue and Zhongyue, and fought with Shanjun Jinqing at their doorsteps. However, the relationship between the two Shanjuns has eased over the years. It is rumored that the Shanjun Qin personally came forward to help them match them, and he did not hesitate to go to the Zishan mountain in person. Jin Qing asked, "Why didn't Ruan worship come?" As the chief worshipper of the Dali dynasty, the last suzerain of Longquan sword sect, Ruan Qiong logically said that he would not be absent from this important discussion. Wei Bo said, "It seems that Lu Zong is the main person who is serving the wine. There is an unwritten rule in the study room of De Liu, that neither Qi practitioners nor mountains and rivers are allowed to speak their minds. It is said that it was the reminder of the national teacher Cui Yu and a great Li Jiu Shanjun in the early years, and it became a custom later." Jin Qing asked, "With such a big happy event, Pai Yunshan is not allowed to hold a night banquet to celebrate? After all, the Longquan sword sect is one of the only two sects in Beiyue. Lu Xianying is a close friend of Qin Pingan, and Qin Pingan is your good brother Wei Shanjun. You can hold one." Wei Bo was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. Jin Qing asked, "Do I have to call you Lingza in the future?" Wei Bo said, "We make up our own gods, and if the Confucian temple fails we will say two things." Jin Qing crossed Erlang's legs, patted his boots lightly and said with a sneer, "It's hard to say how many of us are, but you are Wei Shanjun, will the Confucian temple approve it? If you don't give you face you won't give Qin Shanju face. If you don't give Qin Shanju face you don't give Wensheng's face, isn't that the truth?" Who doesn't know, the real leader of the Confucian temple today is actually an old scholar. Wei Bo smiled and said, "He'll tell Wensheng about the truth of Jin Shanjun." Mr. Da and several scholars who left Luopao mountain before, seem to have not shown up in other mountains yet. It is very likely that they are inspecting the customs of various places. Jin Qing was deflated and looked at Wei Bo, wanting to determine whether it was serious or joking. If it really reaches Wensheng's ears, it will not be beautiful after all. Meng Rong said in a roundabout way, "Whether the Confucian temple can pass through our self-made gods, this time I want to thank Wei Shanjun for reminding me, otherwise we would know that there is such a thing." If it hadn't been for Wei Bo to send a letter to the rest of the Shanjun mansion, saying that according to the ancient and old rules of the Confucian temple set by Li Sheng himself, the Shanjun of each continent and the Duke of Dadu could make up their own names, otherwise who would dare to think? Among the gods of mountains and rivers, who does not envy Wei Bo's connections on the mountain? When Beiyue came to govern the old territory of the Dali dynasty, Piyun Mountain's identity in the landscape officialdom was somewhat similar to that of the prefect of the capital, so it was naturally close to the Song dynasty of Dali. Moreover, Piyun Mountain and Luopao Mountain were close neighbors. Qin Pingan, what it means, the gods and immortals of one continent are well aware of it. There is a saying that someone else first put forward, "It is enough to regard a Luopao mountain as a monk of the 14th realm." It seems that this statement, the more you think about it, the more interesting it is, and the aftertaste is deep. For example, the prince is the vice president of the country, and the 5 mountains also have their own mountains, but these mountains of the princes as vassals are often far away from the Zhengyue Zushan. Beiyue Piyun Mountain has 3 mountains that hold the prince. The one located at the northernmost tip of Aquarius Island is called Xinzhu Mountain. There are continuous boulders like drums in the mountain, and its self-sounding sound is faint like thunder. In addition, there are Long Mountain and Birdmouse Mountain. The main peak is Fenglong Peak, which is known as the ancestor of Wanshan in the middle of Aquarius. This peak has a Laojun cave that can be recorded in Shanhazi. The second peak, Daizhong Peak, is where Jinking's palace was built after Jin Qing made his fortune. There are Pu Mountain and Yulin Mountain in the Mountain of the Prince. Lu Baixiang and his disciple Yuanbao Yuanlai from Luopeishan had settled in Pushen a few years ago. Lu Baixiang and the righteous of Pushen met at first sight and were invited to serve as worshippers. Therefore they were recorded by the Ministry of Rites of Dali, and Lu Baixiang was equivalent to having half a landscape official body. With such a relationship, Pushen Mountain God and Luopao Mountain have a love of incense on the mountain. Qishan Mountain in Dongyue was promoted by Menglong, the old mountain of Dali, and has 2 mountains that hold the prince, namely Eryo Mountain and Yendang Mountain, which owns the big and small dragons. Xie Mountain, adjacent to Fengshui Temple, is not high, so it has not been valued by the local court in history. As a result, in the hands of the national teacher Cui Yu, he was directly promoted to Ijo Siya. Now there are 2 mountains of the crown prince, Luan Mountain and Luan Mountain, which is said to have buried treasures of ancient real people. The main peak is several times higher than Ganzhou Mountain. When the weather is fine it can be seen 100 miles away. There is only Zitong Mountain in Nanyue, and there is only one mountain that holds the prince, named Saiji Mountain. When Fan Junmao walked into the imperial study, the room became quiet in an instant, but after a while, it continued to be lively. Such a subtle pause is like a silent salute, an active toast on the wine table. In that battle, just talking about the 5 mountains, Fan Junmeo's Nanyue contributed the most, and the war in the territory was the most ruthless and tragic. Therefore she is also a little girl. Dadu is dripping with Ho Yanghua, unpopular, and it is inevitable to despise her a little, but when it comes to Fan Junmao, whose golden body is almost shattered and rebuilt, no one dares and is inappropriate. Snup. For example, the master of Xia Mountain, Tong Wenchang, who does not greet anyone when he sees him, is only willing to take the initiative to nod his head in greeting when he sees Fan Junmao today. But Fan Junmao just pretended he didn't see Tong Shanjin's gesture. The key was that Tong Wenchang wasn't angry either. Maybe it's brine tofu, one thing falls another thing? Fan Junmao was accompanied by the family of the king of Caiji Mountain, with extraordinary bearing. He wears an imperial crown and a luxurious attire of purple clothes like a simple piece of clothing, and a jewel as large as a green plum is adorned on the crown. No matter how you look at it, Wang's family is more like Yue Shanjun, and Fan Junmao is more like a priest and maid of Shanjin's mansion. Today, among the 5 mountains in Aquarius, only Fan Junmeo's Nanyue is out of the jurisdiction of the Dali dynasty. Nanyue was originally a special mountain that was formed by manpower stacking soil and mountains. After the war, it was completely wiped out. Caiji Mountain was able to escape the disaster because it was converted into a xianxia ferry by the army tent of the demon tribe. Coupled with the fact that De Lisong lost control of the southern part of Aquarius, Caiji Mountain became more and more detached. It can be said that it is under one mountain and above 10,000 mountains. Fan Junmeo's seat was just opposite Weibo. She sat sideways, resting her cheeks with one hand, stared blankly at Weibo and asked with a smile, "Why didn't he come today?" Weibo had a relaxed attitude, crossed Erlang's legs, twisted his wrists slightly and asked, "How did he come here and what identity does he use? The mountain master of Luopao Mountain, the closed disciple of Wensheng's lineage? Or the last hidden officer of the Great Wall of Swordchi? Neither is suitable. You Fan Junmao has become a mountain lord, why do you still think about it?" Fan Junmao pretended to be surprised and said, "Isn't there a gossip that he has no intention of being the national teacher of Dali, but it is possible that he will have a position above your Dali court?" Weibo wondered, where did the rumors come from? Fan Junmao said casually, "Where can I find the source of this kind of thing?" Although the two Shanjun chatted, they all used he. But everyone knew that they were talking about Chen Pingan. When Fan Junmao mentioned the word, national teacher, the house became quiet for a while, hoping that the two Shanjun could talk more about Chen Pingan. Fan Junmao pouted and stopped the conversation. She just wouldn't let these spectators get their wish. In fact, regarding the matter of Dallas national teacher hanging in the air, the gods here today have their own thoughts. If Chuiyu is still there, then there is no need to think about anything. This embroidered tiger will be the national teacher for a few years, or whoever Chuiyu is willing to let him take over as the national teacher is whoever. In a word of conscience, these gods of mountains and rivers, they are able to have the high position above the brand new golden and jade genealogy in the Confucian temple today, all thanks to Chuiyu. The Dali dynasty did not have a national teacher and embroidered tigers, so how could one country be one continent? Aquarius has no De Lisong clan, and it is estimated that it will not be any better than Tong Yezhou. But having said that, since Chuiyu is no longer the national teacher of Dali, and he has not clearly pointed out the candidates for the national teacher, then there are some landscape gods in the house, and they will feel that the Dali dynasty does not have a national teacher. It doesn't matter, no one is good anyway as long as he compares with Chuiyu, it's all a joke and it belongs to oversight even including a young sword immortal no matter how many identities he has, he can't be an exception. The most feared situation is when De Lisong pushes into power a new national teacher who is skilled and low-handed. If it is said that these are out of public interest, then there are some out of selfishness, and it is even more reluctant for De Lisong to have a new national teacher who can manage the East and the West. Therefore, I hope that the gods of mountains and rivers who have always been empty, still occupy the vast majority. For example, some people want to know a certain attitude of Fan Junmao. As the only female Shanjun who is free from the constraints of the Dali Song clan, how does she view the stone tablet at the entrance of the patriarchs of the many immortals in the Nanyue realm? Is Fan Junmao willing to help those sects on the mountain and the countries below the mountain to seek justice, with De Lisong? Come here today to attend the meeting, will it be Fan Junmeo's decision? On the other side of the door, in charge of the printing of the Legion in a vermilion python suit, reminded softly, "Your Majesty will be here soon, you can stand up to greet you." Almost all the gods of the mountains and rivers in the house stood up one after another, holding their breaths, waiting for the appearance of Emperor Dali. As a result, only Wei Bo, Fan Junmao and Tong Wenxiang were still sitting on the spot, still not moving. When Emperor Song He walked into the imperial study, Wei Bo slowly got up, followed by Fan Junmao and finally Tong Wenxiang with a cigarette stick at his waist. Song He stretched out his hand and pressed it twice. No need to be polite, everyone, please take a seat. In the Dali court, apart from Emperor Song He, there were only two ministers from the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of War. The secretary of the Ministry of War was a thin, elderly man with a cane in hand. He sat down tremblingly. After sitting down, he leaned on the crutches with both hands and started to doze off with squinting eyes. This old man named Xianxia has gone through 3 dynasties. When he was young, he began to move between various ministries and Zhoqing government offices. He was known for his stubbornness in the court and the opposition. Scholars who go to Xuanhu Academy to study without reading in Xianxia Academy will never be able to gain a foothold in mythicalworld. All scholars who like to sing poems with officials from neighboring countries such as the Liu dynasty and the Sui dynasty, it is best not to be an official, and continue to make a name for yourself in the literary world. Not the kind of harsh words. Xianxia did what he said. Just because of Xianxia's arbitrary conduct, he did not even give the face of the official minister Guan, and as a result, the official government, which originally held great power, was scolded almost every day by the capital and local literati. As a result, the national teacher Cui Yu had a heart-to-heart talk with him. The two sides did not know what they were talking about. Anyway, Xianxia resigned on the same day. There is an unfounded official statement that he dropped his official hat on the ground at the Nangsanfang office that day. Xinshirlang scolding you, your mother, a foreigner Cui Yu. But in the 5 words behind this sentence, some people in the Dali officialdom later said with certainty, and some people swore to say no. It's just that within 2 years, Xianxia re-entered the court as an official, a civil official who had never touched a knife, but served as a military minister. The Minister of Rights, Zhao Duanjin, was born from the Tianshui Zhao family, one of the surnames of the Xianghu kingdom. Song He said with a smile, in the later discussion process Tong Shanjun will do it himself. This humorous opening remarks eased the originally solemn atmosphere a lot. Tong Wenxiang nodded, you're welcome. But if anyone is uncomfortable, he'll go to the outside corridor to smoke cigarettes. Fan Junmao said angrily, if you want to smoke, go outside to smoke, otherwise you will make the whole room smoky. What a formality. Tong Shanjun, who looks and dresses like an old farmer, has such a wrinkled old face all year round, and he never shows the slightest joy, anger, sorrow or joy. Wei Bo smiled and said, just open the window. Fan Junmao said, let's change seats. Come and sit next to Tong Wenxiang. Every time he takes a sip, Wei Dashan will help you take a sip, how about it? Wei Bo said helplessly, when I didn't say it. The Emperor Song He smiled, and he was very fond of this kind of gags that were put on the table, at least not all the ones that bored in his stomach. The 5 kings and gods of Beipingzu Mountain gathered together, each with a romantic style. Zhongyue ancient spirit, Dongyue immortal spirit, Nanyue heroic spirit, Xia chivalrous spirit, Beiyue spirit. Song He went straight to the subject and said, first, let me tell you the good news. After your self-designed 5 sacred mountains, the Dali Rights Department handed it over to the Confucian Temple just now, to be precise last night. Finally there was an order to answer the exact answer, on the official document of the Confucian Temple. The content is only 1 sentence, I have read it, no objection, it can be promulgated. But the text content is small, but there are many Confucian Temple sages who signed the monogram on it. There are also 3 Confucian Temple leaders and vice sect masters, as well as 6 academies offering wine and industry, which means that they have all agreed to this matter in writing. Song He cupped his hands and said with a smile, the widow congratulates the 5 mountain lords here, and they all got what they wanted. The 5 mountain monarchs all stood up and returned the salute to Emperor Dali. Of course, they also needed to pay homage in the direction of the Zhongtu Confucian Temple from afar, and each expressed a few words of thanks from their hearts. The house was filled with congratulations one after another. When Wuzuan Shanjun took his seat again, Song He smiled and said, it's really gratifying to congratulate, it's a good thing to solve the disaster. The 5 mountains are all self-made gods, and the key is that the Zhongtu Confucian Temple has passed them all, and none of them have been rejected. In fact, the Dali Rights are also very surprised. Just because of the 2 divine titles, before the Ministry of Rights helped to submit them to the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, they felt that they would most likely be rejected and redrawn. In fact, the Dali court was also mentally prepared to repeatedly communicate with the Confucian Temple on this matter, and had already worked out how the Dali Song clan would persuade the Shanjins to make up the meaning of their own gods once they were rejected by the Confucian temple. Specific strategies to give points to reduce. Song He specially held 3 small court meetings for this purpose, which was to discuss how to help Wu pass the divine title. During the discussion, it was not that no one hinted to His Majesty the Emperor. Now the only person we can talk to at the Confucian temple is the Luopao mountain. However, some people think that even if Qin Pingan is willing to help in this matter, even though he is now the abbot of Wenxing Confucian temple, will it be counterproductive? After all, this closed disciple of Wenxing does not even have the title of a sage of the academy. Is this some kind of statement from the Confucian temple? Jin Qing asked, Your Majesty, have all the 5 divine titles passed? Song He smiled and said, All passed. The 5 mountain gentlemen can rest assured, it is already a sure thing, and the widow dare not lie about the military situation in this matter. Fan Junmao stretched out his palm and rubbed his chin. He didn't mention Wei Ba's spirit, but only said his divine name. With such a big meaning, can this pass? She had chosen 5 or 6 alternate gods, and was waiting for the Confucian temple to reject it and the Dali rites to ask her to redo it 2 or 3 times. In this way it made her a little embarrassed. After all, this time, it was a bit suspicious of smashing the scene by agreeing to participate in the discussion in the capital of Dali. Song He Xing said, The divine name of Mengshanjin of Dongyue is Yingling, Fanshanjin of Nanyu's Tuwei, Jinshanjin of Zongyia's Mingzhu, Tongshanjin of Siyes Dajin, Weishanjin of Beiyu's Night Tour. As long as the enshrining ceremony is held, it will be known to all 9 continents. His Majesty the Emperor said this. The room was silent for a while, but the undercurrent was surging. Dongyue Qishan Mengrong's divine name turned out to be heroic spirit? The Confucian temple even nodded? As for Jinking's Ming candle, is it too obvious that the traces of Myanmar's nostalgic Zhuang dynasty are too obvious, and Udali Song clan don't care? In contrast, Tong Wenchang's De Yen number is relatively normal. Fan Junmao's Hui means green mountains in the world. Isn't it a bit bigger than Mengrong's heroic spirit? The 5 sacred mountains of Middle-earth have this divine name, which is more than enough. Didn't Wei Bo agree to draw up the divine name Lingza? Why did it change back to Night Tour again? As expected of Yueshanjin, you really dare to think and do more than each other, making it hard for onlookers to say anything. Previously, Song He was on the way here holding a bamboo slip made secretly on the mountain in his hand. Every time the emperor saw 2 or 3 things written on a bamboo slip, he handed it over to the in python clothing beside him. Before convening the meeting, the Ministry of Rites of Delhi had already notified many gods and gods of mountains and rivers that when they entered the capital, they could say hello to the imperial court in advance, prepare a bamboo slip, and briefly write down the important matters they wanted to discuss with His Majesty. At most 3 the content should be no more than 100 words. Song He had seen these bamboo slips a long time ago, but after retreating from the early dynasty, he still read it again and quickly browsed it again so as not to miss anything. As a result, in the end only Tong Shanjun returned to the Delhi Rites Department, and there was nothing to discuss. In addition, Wei Bo, for example, proposed on the bamboo slips that the water of the river would be the iron symbol, and by Deng, the sword immortal at the Longgong ruins in Yunzhou, should fill the missing position. Chao Rong, an uncle of Dadu, has a proposal for the new chief of Qiantang. But on this matter, Changchun Ho Yanghua obviously has different opinions, and the 2 sides recommend different candidates. But these are nothing. The one who really gave His Majesty the Emperor a headache was the Nanyue woman Shanjun. She only mentioned one thing on the bamboo slips, saying that Nanyu's boundary, many monarchs at the foot of the mountain, and the head of the mountain hoped that the imperial court of Dali considering here, whether it is possible to remove some of the stone tablets outside the patriarchal hall, not all of them but only part of them. At that time, Song He left less than 10 bamboo slips in his hands, all of which were prepared to be taken to the imperial study for public discussion today. I don't expect Fan Junmao to be in the same camp as the Dali court. I just hope that Fan Junmao will be impartial and neutral in regard to the passage of the self-made god. After announcing the good news to the Wuyue mountain lord, the first thing His Majesty said was the new candidate for the Jiangxin of the Tiefu River under the jurisdiction of Beiyue. The Minister of Rites, Zhao Duanjin, stood up and shared with many landscape spirits about Bai Deng's avenues and his life experience. When Zhao Duanjin finished his narration, Tong Wenchang took off the dry tobacco from his waist and said first, Your Majesty, I have no opinion on Bai Deng being the Iron Fu River god of water. Song He smiled and held out his palm. Tong Shanjun is free. After Tong Wenchang walked out of the imperial study, he glanced at the bamboo slips on the table and turned to look at Wei Bo. After a while, Wei Bo nodded lightly. In the imperial study, there is a chair that is always empty. A native mountain of Dali such as Meng Rong would occasionally look at the empty chair involuntarily. Outside the house, an old man in sackcloth with bare feet squatted under the eaves, smoking a dry cigarette leisurely, and the smoke was lingering. Taking a break from the hustle and bustle, but that's it. In the vast world, among the 5 mountains in ancient times, Xia was responsible for the casting and smelting of hardware, and also in charge of the genus of feathers and birds. At that time, in the hands of the national teacher Cui Yu, the new 5 mountains of Aquarius Island were generally divided into the same responsibilities, with a clear division of labor, and each performed his own duties. But there are different opinions on how Tong Wenchang's Ganzhou Mountain can stand out, directly from a small hill with no name and name, to a respected Xia of a continent. There are speculations that Tong Wenchang has entered the eyes of the national teacher Cui Yu, and some say that it is because Ganzhou Mountain has a good relationship with Cui. In short, there is no way around the word Cui. Tong Wenchang suddenly saw a pair of cloth shoes, looked away, raised his head, and saw a man in a green shirt and long coat. This person was accompanied by 3 men and women who looked like squires, a man in a Confucian shirt with slightly frosted temples, a young man with a yellow hat and a girl with a mink hat. Qin Pingan cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Mr. Tong Shan." Tong Wenchang nodded and said, "Master Qin Shan?" Looking at the people around Qin Pingan again, Tong Wenchang used 2 titles, Sect Master Jiang, Immortal Master Shizhu. As for the Qi trainer who looks like a girl, I don't know it and I have never heard of it. Xiao Emos was said, "I have seen Tong Shanjun." "Thank you, dog is indifferent." Jiang Shangjun smiled, "Just call me Zhou Fei, the Taoist name has collapsed, the true monarch." Tong Wenchang didn't take this issue at all, hesitated for a while but still said, "Last time when Lord Qin arrived in Ganzhou Mountain, why didn't we chat a little more? Dadu excavation in Tonggishao is a very pragmatic thing. At least hundreds of thousands of people can live. It means that last time a young hidden official with a fellow Taoist wearing a hood dreamed of wandering the mountains and rivers of several continents, borrowing a stick of incense from the gods of the mountains and waters. On the side of Beipingzu, Tong Wenchang's Ganzhou Mountain and Mingrong's Qishan Mountain, Qin Pingan all ate behind closed doors. In the end, it was impossible to get together the pattern of the 5 mountains of one continent and the mountains, and the effect of mountain incense was greatly reduced. At that time, Wei Bo wanted to help Qin Pingan send a letter to the other 4 mountains, but Qin Pingan felt that there was no need for it. Indeed, since it was something that could not be forced, it would not waste Wei Shanjun's favor. On the side of Zhongyue Zijan and Nanyue Fanjunmao, everything went well. After that, Qin Pingan and Qing Tong visited Dongyue and Xie together. Meng Rong, because he was born in the old mountain of Dali, was regarded as a polite rejection by Qin Pingan. He still said a polite word when he came. "I'm sorry to let Qin Yingguang go there for nothing." But Tong Wenchang's words were very ruthless. He bluntly said that he thought Tong Yezhou was just a muddy mud, and he Tong Wenchang would stick a stick of incense in the mud? How can you be willing to pay respect to Tong Yezhou, who is so sloppy? Why help them add a shred of luck to the landscape? As expected, Qin Pingan was not disappointed either. Tong Wenchang's meaning today is also very simple. If I want to pay respects to Tong Yezhou, there is no way. But if you said at the time that the Dada would be excavated in the future, there would be countless living people, and it would be more pragmatic than anything vain, then he, Tong Wenchang, agreed to this matter. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "When I came to excavate Dadu, I just had a very rough idea at the time. It's not easy to talk about it in empty words. Besides, I'm not poor enough for that." The typical hard words are soft words, but it still saves face for this Tong Shanjun. Tong Wenchang nodded, "Don't beg if you can. I can say less, but a person's knees should be stiff, the waist should be straight, and if you want to bow your head when you are in trouble, it's nothing. You can treat yourself badly, but don't treat your conscience badly." In his life, Tong Wenchang has really seen too many scenes of infatuation and inferiority, especially the kind of flattery and mutual admiration of scholars, which is the most boring. Is reading a book to flatter people at the wine table and officialdom? Do you eat sage books and stinky shit? Thanks to those who are officials or those who are immortals on the mountain, they just eat that way, and I am very happy to hear that. The mountain Fu Dekong, Pushun, one of the mountains of Zongyia's princes, just took out a stick of dry smoke from his sleeve after he walked out of the imperial study. When he saw the scene on this side of the corridor, he was stunned. Even the masters of the mountain gods have some personal preferences, such as collecting precious books, antique calligraphy and painting, building a study room, and asking writers to write prefaces and postscripts. Therefore, many of the secret calligraphy and paintings in the mansion of the mountain gods and Narcissus can be as long as several feet or even long. It is dozens of feet or collects coins of various dynasties and dynasties under the mountain, and some are also interested in potted plants. As for collecting xiaoshu money of various inscriptions, it is almost a common preference of landscape gods. Just like Pushen Fu Dekong, Tong Wenchang and Tong Wenchang both like to smoke dry cigarettes. They like to have a few sips when they have something to do. It has nothing to do with fatigue, it is purely a matter of habit. However, Fu Shanshan is far less addictive than Tong Shanjun, but today Fu Dekong always hides when he can avoid such matters. Fu Dekong was overjoyed to have the opportunity to come out and take a breath. Within the capital of Dali, the gods of mountains and rivers will deliberately restrain their supernatural powers, and there is Qin Tianjian staring next to them. Qin Pingan took the initiative to say hello, Fu Shanshan. Fu Dekong clenched his fists and saluted, Master Qin Shan. Tong Wenchang knocked on the cigarette rod, stood up, and returned to the imperial study to continue listening. Fu Dekong didn't have the guts to squat outside alone to smoke cigarettes, but it happened that Qin Pingan also seemed to be going to the imperial study, so he went with him. Walking in the not wide corridor in the building, Tong Wenchang walked at the forefront, crossed the threshold and entered the imperial study. Fu Dekong hesitated for a while, but still accelerated his pace and entered the imperial study first. Inside the house, Tong Wenchang walked to the chair, but didn't sit down. So did Fu Dekong. Standing at the door, Supervisor Seely was in charge of the An bowed his head and said, Your Majesty, Master Qin Shan is here. Almost at the same time, the Bingbai brought a chair in person. Xiaomo and Xiego stayed in the corridor. Only Jiang Shangzhen followed Qin Pingan into the house. After all, it is the chief worship of Luopao Mountain, and the official hat is much more than the general name worship. Xiaomo laughed heartily and said, We are just ordinary worshippers, it is not appropriate to follow the sun to take a seat inside. Xiego leaned against the corridor wall and said angrily, He'll ask the mountain master for a second seat to worship Dangding. Xiaomo, remember to say a few good words for me. Xiaomo nodded and said, Whether it will be successful or not, I don't make any guarantees, but it's not a problem to say a few words to your son. Don't say that. Xiaomo is worried that Xiego, who has no chairs in the house to sit on, will run directly to the roof and sit on the roof. Xiadog grinned. Jiang Shangzhen took the chair and placed it near the door casually and said with a smile, I'll just sit here. Inside the house, His Majesty the Emperor has stood up. The old minister of the Ministry of War, who seemed to have been dozing all the time, opened his eyes, stood up slowly and turned his head to look at the door. The Minister of Rites, Zhao Duanjin, got up, held his breath and looked solemn. Beiwe Weibo and Zhongyue Jinqing were the first to get up with His Majesty the Emperor. Yanghua Ho Yanghua of Changchun of Dadu, Chao Rong Lilibo, all got up with them. Fan Junmao looked strange, her eyes wandering as if hesitating whether to run away. The whole house stands. Song He's eyes sparkled, he stretched out a palm, pointed at a certain chair and said loudly, Mr. Qin, please take a seat. It was the only chair in the imperial study that didn't seem to be corrected. Qin Pingan walked to the chair, turned around, lightly picked up the blue shirt and robe with both hands and sat down slowly. Song He sat back in his seat, and then the whole room of landscape gods sat neatly, and the needles could be heard. Some people who thought that even if Qin Pingan was willing to take care of things would be fine, but when they actually saw the green shirt with their own eyes at this moment, they all felt that it was not the same thing at all. This is like a lot of Qi trainers in the world. After winning the war, just because they have never experienced the battlefield, they will feel that a wild throne monster is just like that. His Majesty the Emperor smiled and looked at the woman Shanjun. Fan Junmao's face was full of innocence. Your Majesty, look at what I'm doing, everything has already been said, I just want to help with a message. Qin Pingan asked, Where is the discussion? Song He smiled and said, Fan Shanjun, the talent just now is talking about the boundary to the south of Chidu, and many people want to remove the stone tablet on the mountain. Fan Junmao sighed faintly, knowing this she would not come. Wouldn't it be better to stay in Shanjun Mansion and wait for good news? Qin Pingan smiled and said, Excuse Fan Shanjun, make a list for me immediately. Fan Junmao looked blank. Huh? Wait until Fan Shanjun lists the list. Qin Pingan stretched out a palm and rubbed the handle of the chair with his palm. Xin Shangshu, Zhao Shangshu, look at the list. I will send an official document in the name of the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Rites, asking them to come to the capital of Dali, the people who restored the country and established the country, the old fairy mansion and the new school, each sent someone to come over to talk about this matter, and have a good discussion. According to an old rule, Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights, doesn't have to get up to discuss matters, just clasps his fist, so it should be no objection. The old minister of the Ministry of War was heavy, smiled and asked, "Did this official here wrong really want to add a yamen to make up the number outside the Ministry of Rights? Shouldn't it also be issued in the name of the Ministry of Rights and Honglu Temple?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Honglu Temple jointly wrote the credential, which is not in line with the court etiquette, so it is only responsible for the follow-up reception. Replacing Honglu Temple with a military department of a country is in line with the etiquette system?" Fan Junmao was speechless for a while. Not only regretted that he had agreed to help those guys talk about this with the Dali court, but also annoyed Qin Pingan's aggressiveness. The old man smiled and said, "Qin Guosher, then our Ministry of War will have no objection." Sword of Coming Chapter 1177. Chapter 1177. Someone said it when the old Xianxia said this title. Emperor Dali didn't say anything and Qin Pingan didn't say anything either. Is Aquarius going to change again? Song he smiled and reminded, Fan Shanjun? When the empty chair, dressed in a blue shirt, was seated, the emperor who had had a headache would now have someone else's headache. Feng Shui took turns. Why 30 years only in an instant? Under the watchful eyes, Fan Junmao, no matter how reluctant he was, still had to stretch out his hand to wipe it. I saw the woman Shanjun exerted his divine power, condensing the moisture in the room to make a page of rice paper. She took another breath, the clouds and mist gathered like a ball of golden ink, and she dipped her fingers in it. After dipping in, Fan Junmao, who was so angry, was about to write on the paper, when she saw several landscape gods, including Wei Bo, looking at her. Puffing bag, she is not good at talking harshly with the young hidden official who must have helped a lot in the matter of the gods. The old lady is also afraid of you. What are you looking at, you right? Wei Bo was too lazy to bother with Fan Junmao, and the rest of the mountain and water gods in the house were punished after a few glances, and he was unwilling to provoke the new-named Tsui Nanue Shanjun. After all, in a sense, Zidong Mountain is not within the territory of Dali, then Fan Junmao will be the leader of the mountains and rivers in the vast southern part of Aquarius Island, and there is no Confucian Academy in the south, so she can manage Fan Junmao and Zidong Mountain. It seems that there is only a Confucian temple. Instead, Tong Wenchang, who was quite respectful to Fan Junmao, said, "Trouble Fan Shanjun busy with business, we are waiting in the whole room." Tong Shanjun has always been right about things and not people. Fan Junmao was furious. "The surname is Tong, is it in your way? You have time to run out and smoke, but you don't have time to wait for me to make a list?" Tong Wenchang still said warmly, "If Fan Shanjun needs to write his name for a long time, I will go out to smoke." Fan Junmao choked for a while. Jiang Shangzhen, who was sitting at the door like a door god, smiled knowingly as if he was discussing affairs at the God Peak Patriarch's Hall. With regard to the removal of the monument, the Yamashita dynasty and the vassal states that revived the country and established the country wanted to completely eliminate the remaining influence of the Dali dynasty, and gradually restore their vitality, or in recent years, a group of immortal mansions on the mountain who have established a school in the mountains. The martial arts dojo, they want to restore the situation before the war, and continue to be their gods on the mountain, not bound by any human laws. But with those stone tablets on the top of the mountain, some imperial officials who are unable to sit on an equal footing with the gods on the mountain, especially the common people at the foot of the mountain, when they encounter something, it is like, there is a law to follow, there is a reason to follow, you can rely on this to communicate with the academy. Therefore, every stone tablet is a kind of to the monks on the mountain, so whether it is a genealogy monk or Shanzei Yeshio, they do not want the stone tablet to stay in the mountain for a long time. It is better to become a page-turning old almanac. After a long time it will be put on the shelf, no one cares. The gods here are well aware of this. In the final analysis, the imperial courts of all countries and the immortal masters on the mountain all want pure freedom. Chi practitioners on the mountain are taboos. For example, even if there is a human life dispute outside the mountain, as long as the door is closed, the gods will negotiate with the local court and the government. By giving a pension on your behalf, you can turn the big into the small. No one wants this kind of fairy days, where the sky and the ground are irrelevant, and it will never come back. Even if Confucian academies will intervene more in affairs in the future, this is a general trend, but you Dali Song clan have all returned to the boundaries north of Dadu. Fan Junmao quickly wrote the list, the handwriting was scribbled, and she pushed it gently in the direction of the chair. Not seeing any movement or ripples from Qin Pingan, The paper changed its route without any trace and fell to the side of the desk. Emperor Song he glanced at it first, nodded, then twisted the paper, raised his hand and smiled at Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan then reached out and took the page and said, "It will definitely not make Fan Shanjun embarrassed. If things are big or small but there is always a lot of business, maybe they will visit the capital of Dali in the future. We can also negotiate with our Dali to negotiate a lot of mutually beneficial mountain transactions. Therefore, I have asked Fan Shanjun to bring our Dallas sincerity to the Nanyue realm, so as to avoid misunderstandings, which will lead to nothing turning into trouble, and good things turning into bad things." Fan Junmao nodded with a straight face. "Today you are the host and people have to bow their heads under the eaves, so let your official prestige first, but wait, in the future you will go to Zitong Mountain or Tsaiji Mountain, Qin Pingan. If you don't eat a few closed doors, my mother will give you your surname." Did Fan Shanjun miss a few names? Qin Pingan lowered his head and looked at the list above, raised his head, shook the paper in his hand gently and said with a smile, "The weight is too light. They are all small fish and shrimps." On the list, the Longhong dynasty with the most powerful national strength may only have the same background as Huang Tinghua. The largest immortal mansion, Fengjiao Mountain, is also the master of the nascent soul realm. During the war there was no trace of the immortal master of Fengjiao sect. The entire sect was hidden. In addition to restoring the lord of the ancestral hall, 7 or 8 feng shui treasures that have become borderless land were also collected at a very low price. Now the members of the ancestral hall, not to mention the identity of the guest on the mountain, just have there are as many as 5 or 6 immortal masters with titles enshrined in the title of National Master, Protector of the State and Chief Royal Family. If Qin Pingan remembers correctly, there was a recent incident on the mountain related to Fengjiao Mountain which caused a lot of uproar. Because an old sect site was occupied by a dove's nest in Fengjiao Mountain, he went to his country's new emperor to seek justice. A discussion that should have been decided by the emperor impartially, from the newly appointed guardian of the country, to the first and second worshippers, all of them were the immortal masters of Fengjiao Mountain. Sure enough, His Majesty the Emperor can only be a mess in the middle, be a peacemaker while talking about calming things down, making money with peace, don't show jokes to outsiders while favoring Fengjiashen the indignant Jindanjing Zhang. The door, on the spot, threatened to take all the cultivators with genealogy and relocate to the north of Dadu to join the Dali Song clan. The court didn't pay attention at all, didn't care, the emperor just said a few soft and polite words. It was obvious that he was too lazy to keep it, and if he wanted to leave, just leave. Today is different from the past. A small sect with unconnected dharma veins. The father is kind and the son is filial, the upper beam is straight and the lower beam is straight. If the father is not kind to the son, it will be difficult to be filial, and if the upper beam is not regular, the lower beam will be crooked. Those who are turbid will not be able to flow, and those who do not believe will lose their name. Therefore, it is necessary to purify the source of the original, to establish the origin of the Tao, and to clear the Haiyan River. He even gave him a list, but Qin Pingan was not satisfied yet. Fan Junmao has already made up her mind not to add the remaining names. At the same time, she will not participate in any discussions in the capital in the future. She sneered, "Except for the imperial courts of various countries and the sects on the mountain, in this matter, Qin Guosher should not forget." There are also those wealthy and powerful clansmen who feel that Dali Song is aggressive and unreasonable for not giving in on this matter, especially in the government and private academies, indignant scholars, clamoring to follow the Xuanhu Academy. If you want an explanation, it is even more vast, and many of them are well-known scholars in the world of literature, and you should ask the academy to invite one of your officials of the Ministry of Rights, so that they can confront the court of Dali. Since we both like to take care of things so much, Fan Junmao, will take the blame if it's a big deal. After the headache, it's your turn, Qin Pingan and the Dali dynasty, to be embarrassed. Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rights, was expressionless. Face to face? You guys who are full of food all day long and do nothing, are asking Dali to accompany Wei Li, the newly appointed Minister of Rights in Luojing, to come forward and quarrel with you, but still feel that the official position is not enough, and ask me, the Minister of Rights of the capital of Dali, to visit in person. Lake Academy? I'll understand. Qin Pingan folded the piece of paper gently, put it in his sleeve, nodded and smiled. I don't accept it. After Qin Pingan took his seat, the old Xianxia didn't doze off again. The old man held the crutches in both hands and kept smiling. I love hearing this. He was in a good mood, but what the old Xianxia said was something else. He smiled and said, "Everyone's mouth is full of gold, accumulating and destroying bones. People's words are terrible. Don't file a lawsuit and go to Xuanhu Academy. Another one if you're not careful, you might disturb the Confucian temple in China. What will you do then? Qin Pingan smiled and said, then they have found the right person. The old man pretended to be surprised and said to himself, if the Confucian temple sends Mao Sai from the Liji Academy to our Aquarius Island to preside over justice and help mediate disputes, if this is the case then it will be interesting. Linlu Academy, one of the 72 academies, was built on Piyun Mountain. I believe no one would be so boring. But if it doesn't work if you sue Xuanhu Academy, you have to seek justice with the Confucian temple, and as a result, Mao Sai, who was once a disciple of Wenxing, came. That's so frustrating. Fade Zishan Jin Shanjun said a fair word. In the Great Wall of Sword Qi, one punch will knock down 2 shopkeepers. When you return to Haoran, you have to change the sentence single-handedly Qin Jianxian. Fu Dekong, the of Pushen Mountain, coughed lightly, reminding his Shanjun not to talk like that. Yulin Mountain is also one of the mountains of Zongyia's princes. The female mountain one Shugue heard this and smiled. Sure enough, we are the most generous mountain monarchs who can joke face to face and dare to speak up. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere in the room suddenly became very strange. Why don't you just say a word directly without background Qin Shanju? This statement seems to have first spread from the Shanshui Dibao on the Zhongtu Shanheizong side. A lot of gossip about Qin Pingan was first mentioned by Shanheizong, and then quoted by other Shanshui Di newspapers. Later, it seemed that the Confucian temple reminded Shanheizong once, and then he showed mercy. Qin Pingan smiled, seemingly indifferent. Yuan Yingjing, I can't be called a sword immortal. Besides, even if I don't fall, a jade pure realm sword cultivator doesn't feel like being called a sword immortal there. What a good word. He has traveled far since he was a teenager, and stopped the longest over there, so the Great Wall of Sword Qi can be regarded as Qin Ping's second hometown. In addition to the Zhongtu Confucian temple, the few neighbors of Aquarius Island, including Zhu the king of the East Sea, are Qin Ping's neighbors, or the next-door neighbors in the literal sense. Beiju Luzhou in the north is the continent with the most rushes to the Great Wall of Sword Qi. There is no one, even the Middle-earth divine continent cannot compare with it. One continent's sword cultivators are rebellious and unruly, and outside of other continents, they only recognize the Great Wall of Sword Qi. On Tonggishao in the south, the Qingping sword sect of Luopao Mountain is excavating the Abbot Dadu, which has virtually replaced Yuguazong's position on the mountain. What's more, at the door, isn't there a head of Luopao Mountain under the pseudonym Zhou Fei to worship? Haoran Zhouzhou, the more high-ranking the gods, the more they need to deal with the outside, such as the 2 princes of Dadu, they will inevitably have an intersection with the Donghai Sea King's mansion in the future. Qin Pingan took out a booklet that he had prepared a long time ago. This is the list of members of the genealogy of our Luopao Mountain Jilingfeng Ancestor Hall, plus the income in recent years, roughly who are the partners, and the content is relatively comparable. It's rough, it's just for everyone to have a preliminary impression of our hilltop. Because it's in a hurry, the next sect is located in the Qingping sword sect in Tonggishao. I didn't write it on the top. If anyone is interested, I can let Zhou the chief gives a detailed explanation. Lest the outside world mistakenly think that Qin Pingan became the national teacher of Dali, and he would use the public to help his own interests. Previously, Luopeishan claimed to be closed for 20 years. Once the ban is lifted in the future, it will look completely new. It is inevitable that some people will feel that Luopeishan is backed by Dali, and takes the opportunity to enrich his personal pockets. Only then has this thriving new atmosphere. The Emperor Song he smiled and said, please circulate it by yourself. The last one is to read the booklet. Qin Guoshi, can the court leave this booklet and archive it for preservation? Qin Pingan nodded and said, of course. On the top of the booklet, some members of the genealogy will also have parentheses. For example, the chief of Luopao Mountain worships Zhou Fei. The content in the parentheses is the real name Jiang Shangzhen, the previous suzerain of Yuguazong, and the current Jiang family in Yunku Fudi. The name is dedicated to the stranger. The Taoist name is Shizhu. The old Taoist temple is located, Hao Kai, one of the 3 bright moons in the wild, Jianxiu. Another example is the candidate who has no genealogy record name to worship Xiego. The content in her parentheses is relatively long. She once used a pseudonym by Jing. The old dojo is located in the Wild Sun. The second seat of Luopao Mountain is dedicated to the candidate. Sword repair. At the end of this booklet, the seal is printed with the seal of one party, Luopeishan Qin Pingan. It is believed that the Song dynasty of Dali will soon need to engrave an official seal for Qin Pingan, and the seal is of course, National Teacher of Dali. It is necessary for the Ministry of Rites in Qingtianjian to carefully select an auspicious day, the specific time of the emperor's writing ceremony, the material of the seal, and the blessings of the wuxialover, the Jingshi Qinghuang Temple and the Xuanhuan Temple. The old Shang Shu looked at the contents of the booklet and was amazed. In fact, the booklet has only 2 pages. The first page describes the members of the genealogy of Luopao Mountain, and does not record the kind of guest who can better show the incense on the mountain. On the second page, the status quo of commerce and trade is actually a little bit like a supplement to the item of Kaching. Just in the Beiju Luzhou area, just the cooperation objects of the Zong prefix, there are the Bones Beach Pima Zong, the female sword fairy Li Kai's Duckweed Sword Lake, Lu Jinglong's Taihui Sword Sect, in addition to the Shuilong Sect and the Chongxian department of the Deyuan dynasty, have a long list of business allies on the mountain. As for their own Beipingzu, there are several names among them and they are also very chewy such as Zhongyue Fiasai Mountain, Pushun, Yongjiang and Jinqing, Beiwa Shinju Mountain and Nanyue Mountain in Nanyue. It is due to Chao Gingxin, the former Longquan Kiln superintendent, for his conscientiousness, and grasping small and magnifying. Of course, there is also Pai Yunshen's unreported knowledge. Wei Shanjun and Chao Duzhao seem to have a good heart. The only exception was the splendid viewing of Xinjiang Mountain, but unfortunately, apart from the mountain owner Qin Pingan, the rest of the members of Jilin Peak Patriarch Hall did not really take action. In fact, the Dali court said that it knows very little about the real family background of Luopao Mountain, which is a bit outrageous. Wei Bo looked very carefully, turned a page and then turned back to browse the content. In addition, there is another problem with Spring Mountain Academy. It is too close to Linlu Academy. Besides, there are too few great Confucians in Spring Mountain Academy who can be called famous all over the world. There are no lecturers, and lectures. Zhao Duanjin, Minister of Rites, said, "This matter is really difficult." Chen Pingan smiled and said, "I can't say whether Chunshan Academy can be a candidate or not. It may be necessary for Wei Shanjun to come out and see if we can invite the big gentleman who is in charge of the ceremony of the Abbot Pai Yunshen's ordination to give a lecture at the academy recently." Wei Bo said, "I only dare to say that I will tell the story to Mr. Da, whether or not Mr. Da is willing to go to Chunshan Academy to give lectures. I dare not make any guarantees here." Jin Qing, Fan Junmao and Meng Long looked at each other, and even Tong Wenchang raised his head and glanced at Wei Shanjun. "Good guy, Wei Shanjun, before today's discussion we didn't even know if we could pass the self-made number and we were worried. You Weibo are better. Even the big gentleman has already met each other? In particular, did you already know about the ceremony for the canonization ceremony of Pai Yunshan, the abbot of Mr. Da? With such a great ability, why don't you, Wei Shanjun, go directly to the Zhongtu Confucian temple to take a seat and discuss matters?" The hearts of several Shanjun were sour. In fact, Qin Pingan was also aggrieved in this matter. Lao Tzu persuaded you to make up your own name and use a night tour, and even moved out of your own husband and headmaster Lu. You Weibo not only didn't appreciate it at the time, but also worried about me. As a result, when Mr. Da who met for the first time said that Yushin was good, you immediately changed to another face. Dare to be affectionate is the truth that one's own family says doesn't make sense, right? Hey, in the final analysis, it's still me, Qin Pingan, and I'm soft-spoken. The old Weibo was there, pretending not to know the side of the house. Qin Pingan continued, "I will serve as a temporary teacher at Chunshan Academy, and I will start a class to explain the offensive and defensive battles in the history of the Sword Qi Great Wall. Of course, this matter still needs to be reviewed and approved by Your Majesty and the Ministry of Rites together with Chunshan Academy." Wei Bo said, "Before in Luopao Mountain, Mr. De personally recommended Qin Guosher to be the gentleman of the academy." Zhao Duanjin smiled and said, "Good things come in pairs." Shinshin suddenly said, "Since it is explaining the art of war and martial arts, it is naturally a good thing for Qin Guosher to go to the Chunshan Academy as a temporary lecturer, but if you go to the Songshua lecture hall that we have newly established in Mianzhou for a few years, it will obviously be more justifiable, and there is no need to wait for any negotiation." As a result, I was already the head of the hall, and Songshua Lecture Hall is an institution directly under the Ministry of War, so this matter can be finalized now. After the discussion is over, I led Qin Guosher to Nangsanfang in Qianbu Lang, and arrived at the Ministry of War. The government office write an official document for Qin Guosher on the spot, so don't be a petty temporary lecturer. The deputy lecturer of Songshua Lecture Hall, Zhai Chong, Qin Guosher can choose any one. Qin Pingan shook his head and smiled, "We'll discuss this matter again." The old Shang Shu wondered, "Let's talk about something, either agree or refuse." why should Qin Guosher be slow and uneasy? Qin Pingan said, then he'll give you the right words. In the near future, I will only serve as a temporary lecturer at Xuanhuan Academy. The old man was stunned and hesitated. Zhao Duanjin held back his laughter and asked you to show your old qualifications and grab someone from the Ministry of Rights. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Old Xianxia, don't scold a countryman, I remember that Lizidangshan always belonged to the old Dali native land. The old Xianxia was instantly suffocated. Back then Guosher Chui himself didn't care about anything. You, a little junior brother with embroidered tigers, turned over old accounts and still held grudges like this? Qin Pingan had already changed the subject and said, Yunxia Mountain, Changchun Palace, Huangzujian sect, Lialongking, these alternate sects, we all help out, and try our best to help them all under the premise of conforming to the rules of the Confucian Temple. To be able to join the official sect, of course, the iron needs to be hard, and they also need to be of sufficient quality so that we can add to the icing on the cake. The more sects in a continent, the more sects, and if you get along well with everyone here, the landscape and air transport can be more stable. These plans on the mountain have a single purpose: tactically plan ahead, make thorough preparations early, and strategically make the worst assumptions, assuming there will be a second war. The last sentence in the entire world, few dare to think and say it. When it comes to that war, all of them have lingering fears. However, in Qin Pingan's list, there was actually a bamboo sword sect, which surprised many high-ranking gods. When they saw Qin Pingan seated before, their first thought was that Jinyang Mountain would not be able to eat and walk around. Could it be that when he became a new national teacher, he took into account the overall situation and repaid his grievances with virtue? As soon as he heard this, Fan Junmao became even more irritated. You and Zheng Yangshan can talk so well, but you can't compare with me? Only Wei Bo remained calm. There is a huge screen in the house, drawing a map of the situation of mountains and rivers in a continent, marking the names of all countries with red pens, and writing sects and sects in ink. To the south of Aquarius Island Chidu, Shingao sect, Zhenwu Mountain and Yunlinjiang sect are all time-honored forces with long-lasting incense. There is also a Buddhist temple and a view, all of which belong to the new Jinzongmen of Aquarius Island. In addition, the Shanaya Academy in the Great Sui Dynasty and the Linlu Academy built on the Piyun Mountain are all among the 72 Confucian academies and are jointly stable. A continent's luck. Among them, Guangfu Temple had previously held a ceremony for the enthronement, and a couplet was sent to Luopao Mountain. The Taoist temple on Yulei Mountain has always had a low reputation. Except for the sacrifices made by the local people, even the courts of several nearby countries did not pay much attention to it. The situation of this Taoist temple is similar to that of Ganzhou before it became a mountain in Izhou. The mountains are almost the same and there is no mountain or water. It was not known to the outside world until it was included in the orthodox sacrificial ceremony by the Song dynasty. Such a Taoist true monarch came out. This Taoist real monarch who built a temple on the border of mountains and rivers is relatively rare. There are two Taoist names, Qingyuan and Soshan. According to legend, the day when this king became enlightened was June 24th. As more and more Qi practitioners from other places traveled there, they all said that on the river at the foot of the mountain, which was filled with perennial green mist, they once saw a golden armored deity with a jade-like face, riding a white horse and carrying a long blade. Led the crowd back to the mountain for hunting, whipped past the waves and drove the car with mighty, unparalleled majesty. In terms of appearance and demeanor, he is not inferior to Piyun Mountain Wei Shanjun. The most striking thing is that this monarch has a broad range of clerics and is not subject to the jurisdiction of the Daiyushan monarch. In addition, in the old Baishuang dynasty, Lingfei Temple, where the Taoist Tianjun Chao Rongdao was located, was promoted from Guan to the sect by virtue of merit. The first palace owner of Lingfei Palace, Xiangjuan, was named Dong Ting. Today, the number of sects in Aquarius continent, even if compared to some continents, is not too small. Qin Pingan smiled and said, I have an immature suggestion. I only say that within the borders of Dali, the entire northern border of Beipingzu, the promotion and relegation of Zongmen Shinfu and the gods of mountains and rivers, the two are the same. Not if you become a sect, you can get rid of it once and for all, and if you violate the ban too much, you can have your sect title removed. For example, Dali can help the Huangzujian sect of Xiashan Mountain and Jinyang Mountain be promoted to a sect, provided that they have done enough merits and can be recorded in the merit book of the Confucian Temple. At the same time, it is also possible to remove the sect identity of Jinyang Mountain, which is the first sect. The imperial study fell silent again. Qin Guosher gave a good example. Fortunately, There is no Jianxian in Xinjiang Mountain today to participate in the discussion. The matter is of great importance. When the time comes, the widow and Qin, together with the chief officials of the 6 divisions and the big and small 9 ministers, will discuss the feasibility of this matter together, and may finally invite Linlu Academy and Xuanhu Academy to negotiate. Song He smiled and said, "Next, let's discuss the matter of filling the vacancy in Qiantang. In addition to the candidates recommended by the Dalai Rites, the Marquis of Changchun and Uncle Lily have their favorite officials, Zhao Shangshu. You will circulate the 3 files to you. We will let's see who is more suitable to be the head of Qiantang, and after reading the archives, Zhao Shangshu and the 2 hobo will introduce you to everyone, and then you can speak freely, and those who have long been familiar with each other will not shy away from relatives." The Minister of Rites gave 3 archival documents. Among them, Sun Wenqian's resume was paid more attention in the house, and he took a few more glances because the golden body of the temple has the lowest status and the lowest reputation, so that some gods only know how to jump the river and do not know that he bo is Sun Wenqian. The candidate nominated by the Hofu of Changchun this time is Sun Wenqian. If he succeeds, he has accomplished a feat of leaping 3 steps in a row in the landscape and officialdom. So Yanghua didn't have any hope for this. On the other hand, the nomination of his colleague Li Libo Chao Yong is obviously more likely to pass the deliberation of the Dalai court, at least to compete with the candidates recommended by the Dalai Rites. As soon as Chao Yong came, he was born in the old Qiantang, and the Dalai court must moreover, this kind of internal promotion is more in line with the practice of Shanshui officialdom. According to the archives, the first Hujun of Laoyu Lake, Sun Wenqian, served as a Shuzhou academic government and a Dalai vassal state during his lifetime. Later, because he was good at economic affairs, he was transferred to a transfer envoy. He used to be the abbot of the opening of water transportation, dredging and granary construction in a country, and later he had full authority. In charge of the abolition of redundant subordinate staff, the servant of the Ministry of Industry was transferred to the servant of the Ministry of Personnel, and finally he became the minister of the Ministry of Rites, but after a few days he was soon returned to his hometown. The number text end can be described as extremely sad. But after the death of Sun Wenqian, who was deeply loved by the people in his hometown spontaneously raised money to set up a temple to worship, and Sun Wenqian, who enjoyed the incense, became a heroic spirit who sheltered a place. It is reasonable to say that he should have been promoted to the city of a state or even the city of the capital. However, Sun Wenqian was only dispatched by the imperial court, a foreign minister of the Ministry of Rites, to serve as the little river uncle who jumped over the river, and has not been promoted since then. Seeing this, the gods in the house already knew it. This picture of Sun Wenqian's promotion in the officialdom is actually very clear. The monarch of the small country's court deliberately promoted Sun Wenqian as a wicked person, only talking about the layoff of subordinates, so when Sun Wenqian committed public anger in the officialdom, the emperor naturally complied with the will of the people. To Sun Wenqian crossing the river to demolish the bridge, unloading the mill and killing the donkey. Letting Sun Wenqian be the Minister of Rites for a few days can be regarded as raising the official treatment after entering office by 1 level. In this way, Sun Wenqian, who has no credit and hard work, can be regarded as a decent account. Sun Wenqian himself and the court political enemies, but also have a happy confession. The only accident may be that Sun Wenqian can become a heroic spirit in the local shrine, the contemporaries who are still alive in the temple, or the former disciples who occupy the important points of the officialdom in their place. Of course, I don't want Sun Wenqian to be able to be in the landscape officialdom. As he rose step by step, Sun Hebo could only be Sun Hebo all the time. Aquarius outside the Dalai dynasty, plus the Howran 8 continents outside Aquarius, such officialdoms are endless. After that, Sun Wenqian was more prosperous in his official career. Tiaobo River and Dayunling were neighbors of mountains and rivers. They were both within the jurisdiction of Chidu Changchunho before. Because Tiaobo River was diverted and changed to Laoyu Lake, Sun Wenqian was transferred to Hujun, which is equivalent to jumping 2 levels in a row, from Hebo to the 7th rank position. Afterwards, Sun Wenqian was recommended by Yanghua Ho of Changchun, to work in the Ministry of Engineering of Dali Paidu, and finally took the position of Ihu Shuijun as a member of the Water Ministry of Paidu, but Sun Wenqian needed to go to Luojing Ministry of Engineering office every month. Mao, when to return to Hujuan Mansion depends on the process of handover of the specific affairs of the Ministry of Industry. It's just a 7th rank Hujuan who has already been promoted exceptionally and has not been promoted for a few days, and wants to fill the vacancy of a 3rd rank Qiantang master. Isn't it a bit silly? No matter what, Xuanhuan can be considered a Jain in the emperor's heart if he can take it out to discuss matters in the imperial study of Dali. It seems that Changchun Ho Yanghua does not take this Shuifu subordinate very seriously. This is called a high-ranking official crushing people to death, and there are people in the DPRK who want to be officials. After that, Zhao Duanjin, Yang Hua and Chao Yong made supplements and introduced 3 candidates. During this period, the Marquis of Changchun spoke the least, and she finished Xuanhuan's situation in a few words. Meng Rong took the lead in saying, "The head of Qiantang is an important position, of the 3rd rank, and there are only a handful of them in one continent. The water is filled with texts and the rivers are on both sides of the river. Since ancient times, it has been a place with outstanding people and rich cultural movements. Now it is the 4th grade on the Golden and Jade genealogy of the Confucian Temple, and it is not too exaggerated to cross the 3rd grade and serve as the head of Qiantang." Tong Wenchang said, "I disagree with Meng Shanjun and recommend Xuanhuan." Wei Bo smiled and said, "I don't know anyone well. From the paper, I can't tell the difference, each has its own advantages. Saying it means not saying it." Fan Junmao said, "I don't even know Wei Shanjun well, so I'm even more blinded." Jin Qing said, "Wu Yun, the water of Zhujiang, has a strong personality and has been the chief assistant of Qiantang for a long time. The 2 rivers have the same origin, and the water is naturally connected, so it is more suitable to fill the gap." The old minister of the Ministry of War smiled and said, "That's why historically it was necessary to build tall towers to control the tide." Chao Yong looked embarrassed. Chen Pingan asked, "Zhao Shangshu, is there Xuanhuan's resume and evaluation in the Department of Engineering of the capital city? If there is, I can take it out today as a reference." Zhao Duanjin replied, "Yes. You can get it right away." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "Then there will be Lao Zhao Shangshu who will immediately send someone to take a look at it." Fan Junmao leaned against the back of the chair and let out a soft snort, which was slightly better than the undisguised sneer. "Yu Qingguosher said so, the people here are not fools, everyone is still talking about shit, is it a waste of saliva, just let Xuanhuan be the head of Qiantang." If it weren't for the inappropriate location, Jiang Shangzhen, who was sitting at the door, would have wanted to give this woman Shanjun a thumbs up. Zhao Duanjin rubbed a jade plaque on his waist, and then shook his sleeves again. In front of him, there appeared a pocket wooden model of Nangsanfang and Kajia Lane on both sides of the Qianbu corridor. He was not a chi practitioner. The minister of the Ministry of Rites moves skillfully, and the scenes are constantly changing. Soon, from a file room of his own Ministry of Rites yamen, as if taking objects from the air, he extracted from a pile of files the records about Xuanhuan's work in the Ministry of Industry of the capital. Zhao Duanjin tapped the jade plate with his fingers again, and the scene dissipated, only the file remained in the hands of the Minister of Rites. Only then did Qin Pingan know that the original Xiaoqiao meeting in the Imperial Study Room could still do the same, which really saves time and effort. This record was circulated in the house again. Previously, all the gods present only knew that Xuanhuan had done practical work in the department of accompanying capital, but it was not clear what the credit was and how it was done. But on the archives that Zhao Duanjin just moved in, it is clear at a glance that every suggestion made by Xuanhuan as a member of the Ministry of Water, how to dredging the river, widening the tributary waters or changing the course of the river, and where to do it. How long? Additional inspection results and evaluation content of different officials of various departments of the Ministry of Industry. Chen Pingan said slowly, "In the future, Dali's landscape and officialdom will include the 5th rank and lower, gods and heroes of various landscapes, Qinghuang Temple and Wenwu Temple. Promotions above the 5th rank, except for some special cases, are generally selected from outside. Except for the taboo of the conflict between mountains and rivers, it is not appropriate to exchange identities between mountains and water gods. Wenwu Temple may be transferred to other land gods and water gods, and in the same way the latter can also make up for the former. This is to avoid 2 extreme situations. It is not a group of harmony, standing on the top of the mountain reporting good news but not bad news, and local government offices only focus on their own interests. Otherwise it will be a long-term internal struggle focusing on the struggle for power and profit, and among internal colleagues. Competing and squeezing each other out, whoever does more will do more wrong, and secretly expose it with the official department of the imperial court and the Yuetian monarch's mansion, and accusations are common. Flowing water does not rot, households, pivots or beetles, landscapes, officialdoms and above the 5 rank, must also follow the regulations that court officials are not allowed to serve in their original places. Every exception needs to be archived in the Dali Lily and official departments. People, those who have dissent, must write it clearly so that it is convenient to check accounts later. Afterwards, it is proved that the recommendation of a certain person has merit and no reward is given. This is just to seek political affairs in one's position, and it is just the responsibility. But if the recommendation is wrong, you will be punished because it is dereliction of duty. Some people say that the easiest thing in the world is to be an official. It's okay for outsiders to understand this sentence casually, but since they all say that all things are inferior, only reading is good, and since ancient times, it is natural to study and become an official. I would like to see how easy it is to be an official. For example, today, the Marquis of Changchun recommended xuanhuan to be the head of Qiantang. Assuming that the appointment is approved, including me, Qin Pingan, as long as it is seconded today, Xuanhuanqian's greed of ink, neglect of government, false public welfare, etc. One must be calculated according to the old rules of the Ministry of Personnel set by Cui Guosher, and how to calculate the addition and subtraction. In addition, the Shanshui officialdom's complaint must be reported in real names. However, at the same time, the Yueshan Juanfu and Dadu Hobas residences that accepted the case, as well as the prefecture-level city god temple, serve as supervisors and supervisors related to their responsibilities. The merits and demerits of the government office, etc., will be investigated as soon as the case is investigated. If you are not afraid of turning over the old accounts, you can check it forward 1,000 years. Even if you can check the files of hundreds of years ago, you must check them hundreds of years ago. So from today onwards, there will be no official attention to the past. In the future, I will stare at a certain landscape deity who has been reported by subordinates or colleagues in the officialdom for at least 100 years. Whoever wears small shoes, once found they cannot prove their innocence, then the crime will be added one class, and they will all be dealt with severely. The rights, officials and punishments of the Dali court will jointly set up a new institution, and each of the 3 yamen will have at least one person. The waiter came forward to take charge of the matter, and the 5 sacred mountains and the city god temple in the capital asked the chief official to come to the capital government office on time to discuss matters, and jointly responsible for regularly checking the related files. Chao Yong hesitated for a while, but still didn't raise any objection. Since it was business affairs, he couldn't say anything for his old friend Wu Yun. And today, Qin Pingan is the first time to participate in the discussion as the national teacher of Dali. Chao Yong is so familiar with the officialdom, it is really not appropriate to refute anything. What's more, Qin Pingan was talking about the matter, not only for the matter of filling the vacancy for Qiantang Chang, but also for the new rules of the entire Dali Shanshui officialdom. Today's simple sentence, flowing water does not corrupt households and pivots do not beetle. But in the future, the entire Dali landscape and officialdom will be happy and sad for 100 and 1,000 years. As for the other issues, Chao Yong even dared not get involved. Except for Chao Yong, in fact, almost all the gods present here have some headaches. Once the Dali dynasty has a brand new, unnamed government office, it means that the court's hand will be stretched longer. However, Qin Pingan also proposed the transfer and circulation of various gods, which is another piece of good news for the entire Shanshui officialdom. Tong Wenchang suddenly asked a question. Qin Guosher, if you say that you don't know people well and you make mistakes in hiring people, all of us here are jointly and severally responsible, so what about His Majesty the Emperor? Are you always staying out of the way? Fan Junmao snorted. This old peasant with a face full of bitterness just listened to his words, not like some green-shirt scholar with a hosta on his head. Qin Pingan said indifferently, the court also has examples to follow. Song He smiled and said, as long as there are too many faults, there is no saying that the merits and demerits are equal. The widow needs the next sin. Tong Wenchang nodded and said, then I won't have any problem. Tong Shanjun subconsciously touched the cigarette stick on his waist. In the past 100 years, almost all matters on the mountain were decided by the national teacher Cui Yu according to the usual practice in the study of the great Li Yu. It is only said that the Emperor Song He from the first emperor of Dali to the present is all aware of it in advance, and he is only aware of it. For example, I got all the proposals on the table today. In fact, Qin Pingan had already passed the air with Emperor Song He in the village school in Suian County. The two sides talked in detail while walking. Qin Pingan will explain why this is the case, what are the advantages and disadvantages of each, in the short term the advantages and long-term worries, the corresponding backup plan, how to check the gaps and fill the gaps, and how to change the policy at different stages. Qin Pingan has related explanations. Qin Pingan didn't know how his brother Cui Yu became the national teacher, and how he got along with the emperors of all dynasties. Just treat people with sincerity. The difficulty lies in the mutual causes of success and failure, and the rationale is impermanent. But it is not that there is no solution. It is simple, and simple, that is, it is constantly correcting mistakes. It is difficult to say it is difficult. If any country, court or monarch and ministers have problems, they will, if we can solve the problem, Heiliguzuo will be cut off and the dynasty will be changed. Therefore, if it is not the rules set by senior brother Cui, we must not make any changes. If a policy has reached the point of being out of date, to a critical stage where only the adjustment of the details and the repair of the framework can no longer solve a certain crux, then there is no other way but to tear it down and rebuild it. Xiego asked again. The mountain master came out this time to serve as Dali's national teacher, Song Changjing, and the Luo king Song Mu. It's Song Bianshai from Ni Ping Lane, so they all have no opinion? Xiaomo smiled and said, I don't know. The son didn't say anything. Xiego said, if the mountain master doesn't say it, you want to ask? Xiaomo said, I'm not interested in these things. Xiego grinned and said, as the second seat of worship, we mountain masters don't know how to say hello to me in advance for such a big thing, it's too rare. Xiaomo smiled and said, this is a proposal I made not long ago. The son thinks it is feasible, so he will take it seriously because Chief Zhou has just returned to Luapa Mountain, and the son originally planned to hold a meeting of the Ancestors' Hall in the near future, and then bring it out and say it. Say, let's see everyone's opinion. Xiego rolled his eyes and said, what are you doing with so much effort? We Luapa Mountain have always been the words of the mountain master. We just don't talk about it and our hearts are very open. Xiaomo shook his head and said, it's not like that. Xiego was full of disapproval. Xiaomo explained, it's not surprising that you think so. If Mr. Zhu hadn't explained my doubts to me, I would have misunderstood Mr. Zhu. According to Mr. Zhu, it's because Mr. Zhu has an abacus in his heart, and those who have made decisions when it comes to openly discussing things with us, the young master has taken care of all of us early. Therefore at first glance there is no objection. In fact, if there is any objection, as long as anyone will be embarrassed, the son will not at all speak up. Xiego sighed. Being a mountain master is so exhausting, and becoming a national teacher, is it still good? Xiaomo smiled and said, I don't know what the young master's mentality will be like when he becomes a national teacher. But when he is only the mountain master, the young master doesn't feel tired at all, but feels very happy. Xiego asked, did he tell you that again? Xiaomo shook his head and said, you don't need to tell me, everyone else can see it, what do you think? Xiego nodded quickly, that's a must, we can all see such a simple fact. On the other side of the house, when the new site of the ancestral temple was chosen for the goddess of the Yuya River, Song he said with a smile, suspend the discussion, you can rest for a quarter of an hour. Just waiting for these words, Tong Wenchang touched the cigarette stick and glanced at Chen Pingon, the latter nodded tacitly, Tong Shanjun looked at Fu Dekong again, and the latter also nodded. The three of them stood up almost at the same time, walked out of the imperial study, and then came to the corridor under the eaves. The three same fellows, who were not familiar with each other, started to squat and smoke cigarettes. Fu Dekong, the of Pushun Mountain, is still unclear for the time being. He followed the two and he squatted like a gourd. It became a habit for him to come to the imperial study room in the capital of Dali in the future. It's traditional. In fact, there are not many people who come out of the house to breathe. They still stay in the imperial study and take the opportunity to chat with His Majesty the Emperor and more. Seeing that no one took the initiative to greet him and chat, Jiang Shangzhen got up angrily, crossed the threshold, came to the corridor and said with a smile, Mr. Mo, Miss Xie. Xiao Mo has always been dressed in yellow hat and blue shoes, but instead is the girl in the sable hat with blushed cheeks. She stepped on a pair of snow-white flying cloud shoes, and there are clouds under her feet, which means soaring. Xiao Mo smiled and said, Chief Zhou has worked hard. Xiego said with a smile, as expected of Chief Zhou, he is so powerful. Jiang Shangzhen said with a smile, stand up with a sullen face. When you go out, you must stand up the golden signboard enshrined by the chief of Luapa Mountain. I don't usually do this and am very good at talking. Xiaomo smiled and said, Jing Qing said that Chief Zhou has a good drink. Mr. Zhu and Xiaomi both said that Chief Zhou's wine is better. Jiang Shangzhen smiled brightly, actually my alcohol intake and wine quality are average. It's just that I vomit after drinking and drinking. Xiego said, Zheng Dafeng said that the Xinjia wine brewing on our mountain is the treasure that Chief Zhou bought at a large price, and the money is generous. Others buy several jars and several jars. Purchase. Jiang Shangzhen began to scold himself, A stupid person has more money. Chief Zhou chatted like this. Xiego couldn't keep up. Xiaomo said, Chief Zhou can make money and spend money. He doesn't worry about money or worry about money. Cultivation should be like this. Jiang Shangzhen hurriedly reminded himself to be restrained, and almost blurted out, Xiaomo, both of them are his own brothers, why divide you and me, just take the title of chief enshrined. Fan Junmao was almost pulled out of the imperial study by Wei Bo, judging by her posture. She was about to ask Qin Shanju Xingshi to ask her guilt. It seems that Qin Dai Jiangxian is chatting with Tong Shanjun, saying that the mountains are not high and there are immortals. High potential is good for danger, high road is good for safety. After Tong Wenchang heard this comment, he rarely squeezed out a smile. Fan Junmao was even more angry. Qin Pingan raised his head, stretched out his hand and waved a little smoke and said with a smile, Fan Shanjun, why bother, you are not a person with good face. Fan Junmao almost turned around and left. Bad face and no face can be the same thing. The woman Shanjun, who was about to receive the Tsuiwei divine title, was about to move when she heard Qin Pingan laughed heartily. In the house, it's not bad to break the rules. I'm here to give Fan Shanjun a congratulations. Zitongshan is a little different from the other 4 mountains. The Confucian Temple will give Nanyue an additional plaque, the green mountains in the world. As for where to hang this plaque, whether it is the gate of the mountain, the gate of the mansion, or the study, it depends on Fan Shanjun's personal I like it. Tsuiwei is another name for the mountain, and as the name of the mountain god, it cannot but be said that it is a miracle in the landscape. In the history of Beiju Luzhou, there was once a sect called a behemoth. It was the leader of the immortal mansion on the mountain in the south of the continent. Anyway, by the time Dizong of Qing dynasty became a thing of the past, the name of the sect on the mountain related to Tsuiwei, and the Taoist name of Qi practitioners were always vacant at the Confucian temple. Any application was rejected. The reason is unknown. In addition, there is a Tsuiwei Chu clan in the Middle Earth divine continent. It is a 1,000-year-old nobleman. In his early years he was a worshipper of Mao cultivation at Denglongtai in the old Dragon City. But this, Tsuiwei, belongs to the place name. Therefore, Fan Junmao's self-proclaimed divine name, Tsuiwei, and then passed the review and inspection of the Confucian temple, is a huge leak. Fan Junmao's eyes widened. Really? Qin Pingan said helplessly, can this kind of thing be a joke? The content of such a big plaque is not dared to be written by anyone. Even if there is such a stupid scholar, Fan Junmao would not dare to hang it without authorization. You are stupid and I am stupid. Determined that Qin Pingan was not joking, Fan Junmao couldn't hide his joy, although I know it's a way to hit a sap and then give a jujube to eat. Speaking of this, Fan Junmao laughed out loud, reached out and rubbed his cheeks. It doesn't matter, I also recognize it. It's not a problem to come back a few times like this. Wei Bo teased next to him, how many ways does a slap give a candy to eat? I like this kind of slap too. I'm afraid of the pain in the face because I'm afraid that the opponent's palm will be swollen and won't want to slap again. Fan Junmao sat down on the steps. Qin Pingan stopped speaking and said with a smile, Fan Shanjun doesn't dislike the smog now? Fan Junmao shook his sleeves, isn't there Wei Shanjun present? Reciprocating the favor, Fan Junmao just wanted to tell Qin Pingan about the forces hiding behind the scenes. I never thought that. Qin Pingan immediately guessed her intention, waved his hand and said again in his heart, I said something that won't embarrass you, but it's not a scene, otherwise why would I deliberately add fuel to the fire and say something more to you? List how many are missing from the above. Just seeing that you are angry, I am sure that you will not go on saying what I want, otherwise if you agree to complete the list, I will make an exception and remind you with my heartfelt words in the room. One sentence we can cooperate and play a show. If it is very good now, it is the face of De Li Song to Zi Tong Shan, and Fan Shanjun will save face for those who slip through the net. Going down a step, the result is still the same, but it will not make the relationship too stiff. If they understand a reason that is not an example, that is the best. Don't blame De Li for not showing any affection. Fan Junmao was speechless for a while, silent for a long time, a little annoyed. Qin Pingan, please help me and see, are you born a piece of material for an official, or am I born unfit to be an official? Qin Pingan smiled and said, to treat an official as not like an official, and not to move the nest, not to be pushed to the Qingshui Yamen to sit on the bench, and even to make the official bigger and bigger, that is the real skill. Fan Junmao's face was indifferent and he said with a smile, just listen to these big truths. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Fan Junmao, just listen and see. Let me say another big truth about someone said it? Fan Junmao raised his eyebrows, raised his hand and flicked his ears. For the sake of that plaque, tell me he'll listen. The big deal is that the left ear goes in the right ear and goes out. Qin Pingan took a big puff of dry cigarettes and spit out the smoke leisurely, but he was speechless for a long time, just stared blankly at the front, as if it was a place not far or near. Fan Junmao gave a feeding, reminding Qin Pingan not to be dazed. Wei Bo sat beside her. This woman, Shan Jun, once stayed alone in the lonely Zitong mountain. Facing the savage army of monsters that came from all directions like a tide, she seemed to speak with the whole world silently and boldly. Crack, the old lady really won't leave. Qin Pingan recovered and said sorry to her with a smile, and then he really started with, someone said it. You don't have to pretend to be close to the world, and you don't have to pretend to be distant from this world. You should be reasonable, and you should not be too thick or too thin. We are still us, we are us. Sword of Coming Chapter 1178. Chapter 1178 is also hometown. The smoke curls under the eaves, and the world is like a flower in the fog. Fan Junmao asked, do you know who accompanies the sage and Abbot Zaitangshan's canonization ceremony? Qin Pingan shook his head. It's hard to say. For the time being there are only Piyun Mountain and Fei Zishan. They are Mr. Dan Zhogua. There are many swordsmen in the old Zhuang dynasty. Fan Junmao said, I have the opportunity to have a drink with Fan Air and persuade him. The boss is not too young and he is still a bachelor. It's ridiculous. Is it so interesting to make money? I'm not idle at all throughout the year. Mr. and hundreds of craftsmen hang out together. What are you planning? Every day thinking about the abacus, fooling around with the ledger. Qin Pingan smiled and said, some people just like to make money by nature. They are very pure. They are similar to martial arts, learning boxing and sword training. They enjoy themselves. Fan Shanjun can rest assured. Fan Junmao got up and said with a smile, would you like me to call out Chao Yong? His good deeds have been disturbed by you. Don't settle down. The gods of the mountains and rivers are all grown up. Qin Pingan nodded and said, you just said I asked him to come out and have a chat. Wei Bo stood up and patted his robe. He'll follow. It is not suitable for Qin Pingan to go back and drag Uncle Lily to find a place to chat privately. The traces are too heavy. Today's discussion, which one is not a person who has cultivated to the transformation realm from the public sect. Fan Junmao is also an unreliable speaker, and the officialdom is twisted and twisted. There are several meanings hidden in a sentence. She is probably only Mengtong's level, and Wei Bo is not very relieved. On the way to the imperial study, Fan Junmao asked in his heart, Wei Bo, Qin Pingan is also an official in the summer palace? Wei Bo laughed dumbly. It's okay to do it the other way around. I can explain several meanings in one sentence. It's easy for both parties to speak and obey. Or simply don't speak and xianxia is reasonable. Fan Junmao nodded. Understood. People talk to people and ghosts talk to ghosts. Wei Bo smiled without saying a word and declined to comment. Fan Junmao said, Wei Yao, don't you understand? I'm just a pawn. I have both praise and criticism for the Sword Chi Great Wall and Howran officialdom. Wei Bo smiled and said, so it turns out I have been taught. Don't you, Fan Shanjun, talk to me about this? Isn't it the same as talking to Chief Zhou about how easy it is to make money, and saying politeness to Mr. Xiaomo? Just as Jin Qing deliberately ridiculed Qin Pingan in the process of discussion before, if one punch will knock down two shopkeepers, or what single-handedly swordsman, it seems like a gag, is it not intentional? The first is to remind the audience that Qin Pingan was the last hidden official. The second is to pave the way for Qin Pingan, eliciting the phrase self-deprecating behind Qin Pingan, that he is only in the nascent soul realm and cannot be a sword fairy. After all, the entire vast world is now speculating about what realm Qin Pingan is in, and how can he accomplish the feat of engraving at the head of the city, sword cultivator in the Ascension realm, or higher. If it is really a sword cultivator who started in the Ascension realm, with such personal strength, coupled with the identity of the national teacher of Dali, then every time he will discuss something in the study of Dali in the future. But once Qin Pingan's realm is really only nascent soul, even if it is Jade Pu or Immortal Realm tomorrow for the high-ranking gods in one continent, they all feel that they can talk about things just like Qin Pingan himself said, it is the kind of there are discussions and discussions. As for why Qin Pingan deliberately downplayed his realm, Wei Bo can understand it very well. It is not advisable to raise the tone too high. Jianxiu is suitable for the battlefield, not for the officialdom. Chao Yong, who was chatting with a mountain who was familiar with the mountain in the house, quickly came over. Qin Pingan had already put away the cigarette stick and stood under the corridor waiting for the old Qiantang chief. Qin Pingan went straight to the point, went straight to the subject and said with his heart, Uncle Lily, I have only heard about Wu Yun, the water of Zhejiang that you recommended, but I have never had the opportunity to contact him, but Sun Wenqian is my friend, so on this matter I am selfish. In the future, if I have the opportunity to go to the Yunshui Palace for a drink, I will trouble Li Bo to help introduce me, and take me to the Zhejiang Water Palace to make amends. After listening to Chao Yong, he nodded and said, I'm very glad that Qin Guosher is willing to meet me so frankly. If there are similar things in the future, at least on my side, there is no need to explain. As for Wu Yun, Qin Guosher is relieved, there is no need to explain. Think about it, this time I recommended him to make up for the shortage of Qiantang chief. It was my own opinion. I didn't say hello to him at all. Fry a few appetizers and celebrate. Speaking of this, after a moment's pause, Chao Yong suddenly smiled. Wu Yun used to dislike the gang of sword immortal masters in Xinjiang Mountain, and during the festival the only time she gave money to Xinjiang Mountain was to watch the scene through Jinghua Shueiyue. At the sect ceremony, when he was happy, he threw several pieces of Guyu money, saying that the money was well spent. Qin Pingan couldn't help laughing and continued to laugh in his heart. Later, on your majesty's side, there may be a discussion about the remaining few quotas in Chidu within 100 years. I have already greeted the Marquis of Changchun before, and the Bixiao Palace is willing to let them go. The remaining spot. The mountains and rivers are different. The residence of the high water of Dadu is different from the mountain god. The former often hangs two plaques such as Yanghua's Changchun Hofu and Bixiao Palace. Dadu Hofu is the official government office of the Confucian Temple and Bixiao Palace. It is the name of the dojo of the water Yanghua. Chao Yong, an old jiao from Qilalong Fengshui Cave, also owns two plaques of Lilibo Mansion and Yunwan Palace at the same time. Nowadays it is rumored that Jidu and Beiju Luzhou, and the Virtue Palace plaque of Duke Lingyuan Xinlin came from someone's handwriting. Previously, Chao Yong had written a letter to Luopao Mountain and asked for something. The Yunshui Palace had already used up a Dadu water quota given by the Dali court, but Chao Yong still needed another one, which happened to be kept by Yang Hua. No, Chao Yong hoped that Qin Pingan could help match up with Bixiao Palace and ask Yang Hua for that spot. Chao Yong was relieved, and in this way he had a good explanation for his old friend Wu Yun. It is a worshipper of Zhejiang Water God Mansion, and Wu Yun's close friend. He was born in the genus Jiaolong. When he reached the bottleneck of Jindan, he urgently needed to rely on Dadu to get into the nascent soul realm. The promotion of the official position is not unimportant, but it is not as good as the increase in the height of the golden body of the temple. In fact, Wu Yun lacked interest in making up for the shortage of Qiantang chief, as Chao Yong said. Especially when Qin Pingan mentioned the transfer of the divine position today, it is equivalent to breaking through several barriers. Once the assistant of Zhujiang Shuefu succeeds, he is afraid that he will not have an official position. Among the gods, the most indispensable thing is time. Chao Yong said, this place is too precious, it has a price and no market, the key is Wu Yun's friend, the affair can't be delayed. I want open this mouth to Qin Guosher. Qin Pingan jokingly said, Brother Chao, to use an inappropriate analogy, it's like someone who borrowed 10 taels of silver from someone and asked someone to borrow money, saying that these 10 taels are worth 100 taels of silver for fear of lending it out. The money side doesn't know how much favor he sold. Why Brother Chao has such a big business for fear that I won't collect the debt? Chao Yong laughed aloud. It's easy to say both debt collection and drinking are correct. Mr. Qin can be said to be a full-time official now. If he thinks about it, he will only get more and more busy with his affairs. Otherwise, I'm afraid that Mr. Qin will not come to the humble house. Qin Pingan smiled and said, why don't you say thanks for helping others and yourself? Reciprocity is respectful and water flows slowly. When it comes to drinking, I have never been counseled. Except for Lu Jianxian, no one at the wine table is afraid. Chao Yong nodded. Mr. Qin, in the future, whether it's a business or a private matter, it's easy to talk about my Yunshui Palace and Qiantang Water Palace. The implication is that whether it is Qin Pingan, the national teacher of Dali, or the mountain owner of Luopao Mountain, or Mr. Qin, who fell in love at first sight and saved two personal friendships, Chao Yong's Lilibo Mansion and Yunshui Palace, and in the past the Qiantang Shuefu, where the subordinates gathered together, would always keep this kindness in their hearts. Even if Qin Pingan doesn't need it, for example, members of the genealogy of Luopao Mountain will travel down the mountain in the future and pass two places, and they will definitely be guests. After saying goodbye to Qin Pingan and entering the imperial study, Chao Yong and the Marquis of Changchun, who were seated next to each other, nodded their thanks. Yang Hua didn't know what to do, she just nodded back to this uncle out of courtesy. In fact, Qin Pingan himself and Emperor Song he asked for this quota. It is customary not to say anything in the imperial study, not to mention Xiao Yong's temperament and Yang Hua's behavior. After the end of the small court meeting, they each go back to their houses, and there may not be any correspondence between Bixiao Palace and Yunshui Palace. And even if Xiao Yong took the initiative to contact Yang Hua, and Yang Hua was not Fan Junmao, she would definitely not reply directly to Uncle Lily, explaining that there was no such thing. After all, she is the Marquis of Dadu raised by the Queen Mother Nanpin. Yang Hua needs to take every step of the way to secure a firm position in the officialdom, and she is not allowed to talk and do things like Fan Junmao. Qin Pingan took out the cigarette rod and went back to the steps, because Qin Pingan and Tong Wenchang were the first to squat and smoke dry cigarettes, and Fu Dekong the of Pushen Mountain chose a position. Qin Guoshi's central position. Just now, Qin Pingan got up to chat with Xiao Yong, and when he came back he didn't seem to want to take the extra 2 steps, so he casually squatted beside Fu Dekong, and replaced it with the mountain of the Zhongyue Prince's mountain. Fu Dekong hesitated for a while but didn't say anything. Qin Pingan smiled and said, Lu Baixiang chose to settle in Pushen back then. Over the years, Fu Shanshan has taken care of him a lot. Just say one thing, you can see the true temperament. At the beginning, Yuan Lai, the direct disciple of Lu Baixiang, found a lot of opportunities in the Pushen realm. Yuan Lai, a pure martial artist, actually got a whole broken secret realm rooted in Pushen, which is treasured inside. There are 2 golden books and jade ultimatums buried by the old Zhu Ying founding emperor. They are rich in dragon energy and can be said to be invaluable. Logically speaking, this is the private property of Pushen Mountain. Yuan Lai is like a guest who is staying overnight. He dug up a jar of silver in the yard and the owner took it all back. It doesn't matter much about this, saying that these fairy family opportunities are tasteless to the gods of mountains and rivers, and it is a good thing for people who have fate to get them. Fu Dekong signed a contract with the mansion of Zishan Mountain. The mountain god mansion also made a contribution and took the initiative to help Lu Baixiang's master and apprentice repair the secret realm. Fu Dekong said with a smile, It's not about being a good friend. I have similar personalities with Mr. Lu. Qin Pingan asked with his heart, Shin Fu Shan, who respects by Yujing's headmaster Lu more? Fu Dichang's study is named Qiushui Ling Fu, not to mention Lu Qin also has a De Chong Fu. Fu Dekong said frankly, It's not a comparison, it's a high praise. I admired Lu Qin so much before my death, but it's a pity that the priesthood is low and it's a big pity. Qin Pingan nodded, Scholarly, as long as you are a little bit obsessed with Taoism, you can't get around Lu Qin. Fu Dekong asked cautiously, I heard that Qin Guosher and Lu Zhangjiao have known each other for a long time? Qin Pingan smiled and said, The grievances are clear and the relationship is not bad. Fu Dekong was envious. Tong Wenchang rarely took the initiative to speak and asked, Shin Fu Shan, do you have any spare wood for the ancient sandalwood of Pushen? Lijiashan and Wanshan have been building mansions recently, and immortal wood is urgently needed. The gap is on the top. About 10,000 jin. In Yuzhang County, Hangzhou, now the logging institute is strictly controlled, and it is impossible to count on it. Before coming here, the 2 mountain gods asked me to ask for help and see if they could ask you for an affordable price. Fu Dekong looked strange. Mr. Tong Shan, the previous booklet by Qin Guosher was only 2 pages thin. Have you not read it? Qin Pingan smiled and said, Fu Shanshan, when doing business, you have to follow a first-come first-served rule. Tong Wenchang suddenly said, Why, Pushen sandalwood has been rounded up by Lu Baixiang? No wonder they both winked at me when I walked out of the house. At first, I thought it was to remind myself not to forget to send a message to Fu Dekong, but it turned out to be a hint that I should not grab business with Qin Guosher. Last time I took Qing Tong to visit Zishan together, and Qin Pingan negotiated 3 transactions on the mountain with Jin Qing by the way, including the sandalwood from the fairy family in Pushen. In the old Zhu Ying dynasty, there were 4 uniques, which were famous for moving 1 continent, sword repair, beauty, famous inkstone and ancient sandalwood. Among them, the sandalwood of Pushen is almost as famous as the giant tree in Yuzhang County, Hangzhou, Dali, and the wood used for palaces and imperial tombs in central Aquarius is all from Pushen. And several kinds of sandalwood made by the secret method of Pushen Lingfu have the difference of yellow, white, blue and purple. In addition, a quarry was built within the jurisdiction of Fazishan Mountain, and a large amount of river sand, a specialty of the Yongjiang River, was purchased, and the golden and jade genealogy of the world's mountain and water gods was recompiled according to the Confucian temple. The mountain of the Prince of the 5 Mountains and the temple of the city god in the capital of Dali have the same rank and are of the 3rd grade. Last time in the Zhongtu Confucian Temple, Qin Pingan once met the old immortal Li who traveled all over the 9 continents, saw all the water veins in the world, and then compiled a water sutra. Not only did he see it, he also talked about it at the time have some free time. The demeanor of the older generation of scholars is often that the higher the knowledge, the calmer the mentality and the broad-mindedness. Yongjiang River is located in the territory of the old Zhuang dynasty. There is a cloud in the ancient book Shui Jing, and there is water in the 4 directions. On the booklet handed out by Qin Pingan, there is also a peculiar soil, unique to Caiji Mountain. Xianxia of Lingfei Palace, whose Taoist name is Dong Ting, had previously opened a dojo at the battlefield site, and she had bought a considerable amount of secluded soil with the family of the Mountain King in Caiji Mountain at a high price. And the price Qin Pingan negotiated with Xuanhuan at that time was probably less than half of Xianxia's price. Therefore, the business partners of Luopao Mountain were written by Qin Pingan on the booklet. It is only the Shanshui dojo that has seats in the house today. There are Fizi Mountain, Zitong Mountain, Caiji Mountain, Pushen Mountain, and Yongjiang Mountain respectively. As for Pai Yunshan and Wei Shanjun, can they be called business partners? Tong Wenchang asked, Qin Guosher, do you still need money to excavate the Dadu in Tong Yezhou? Qin Pingan said, the 2 immortal money needed in the early and midterm are already available, and there will be no worries about money for at least 30 years. Tong Wenchang asked again, is it possible to raise 20,000 grain rain money? Regarding this important event, there was a lot of discussion in Aquarius Island, and it was spread on the mountain long ago. Everyone was speculating about how many grain rain money was lying on the account book of the temporary Zhu Shirtang built in the capital of Yunyan Kingdom. For example, when Qin Pingan was drinking at Dayunling before, the mountain Do Yen took the initiative to mention the excavation of Dadu and Tonggishao, and asked Qin Pingan whether it was appropriate to throw money in, but don't make a sound. Qin Pingan suggested to Do Yen and Sun Wenxian that if they have spare money, they might as well give it a try. He will use a method similar to Qingping sword sects holding on behalf of, let Dai Yunling and Lao Yuhu take shares. In the end, Do Yen became ruthless. He patched things up and borrowed money. Together with a few good mountain friends, they took out 400 pieces of Guyu money and sent them to Luopao Mountain. However, Sun Wenxian still did not participate in this matter. The reason is very simple, just one word, poor. If you put it nicely, it would be 2 words, poverty. Qin Pingan smiled and said, not more. Fu Dekong asked curiously, can you give me a rough figure? Qin Pingan said, not counting the immortal money invested in the midterm, only the first Guyu money that has been received is about 30,000 grain rain money. Qingping sword sect has 3,000, Yu Guizhong 5,000, Dequan Yao clan 2,000, Ai Zhou Lu clan 10,000, Xuanmi dynasty Yu clan 2,000. Then Zhang Ji's Baozhai came to the door and added another 4,000 pieces of Guyu money. In addition, there are also some scattered Guyu money into the account, most of which are from the imperial courts and sects on the mountain from Tonggishao and some families. On the other hand, Wang Zhu's Donghai Sea King's mansion took out a total of 14,000 grain rain money in one go. Such a large amount of fairy money will be used as a midterm budget and will not be moved for the time being. Fu Dekong smacked his tongue. Qin Pingan smiled and said, it's not as cheap as our Chidu excavation. Tong Yezhou has a lot more overhead. There are more than 120 kinds of expenses and subcategories. Tong Wenchang nodded, good thing. After a moment of silence, Tong Wenchang said, if the money is not enough, Qin Guosher and I will let me know. Fu Dekong smiled and said, Master Tong Shan has a lot of money? Tong Wenchang shook his head and said, I only have a little savings, it looks like 300 or 400 grain rain money. I don't have much money, but it can only be regarded as a little heart. Ganzhou Mountain has no way to make money, and I am not good at business. Far inferior to Lujiao Mountain and Wan Mountain. Fu Dekong couldn't help laughing and said, Mr. Tong Shan, the tone of your speech just now didn't sound like 300 or 400. Qin Pingan nodded in agreement and said, even if I really run out of money someday, I can't bear to open up with Tong Shanjun. There's not much money, but the debt I owe is not small. Tong Wenchang grinned, a rare smile on his face. Fu Dekong remembered something and asked, Qin Guosher, have you never thought about Dali's side? Qin Pingan shook his head and said, let's talk about it later. He really hesitated whether to let the Dali dynasty participate in the excavation of Dadu and Tongya continent. The quarter of an hour's break passed by in a flash, and he returned to the imperial study to discuss matters. Although Tong Wenchang didn't read the second page of the book very much, he read the contents of the first page very carefully. Master Tong Shan even thought about it, who could have two ascension realms in the Kendo sect of the vast world. Jinsho, the answer is of course very simple, there is none. In fact, after Zhou Shinji died in battle, there are no sects that have an ascension realm Jinsho patriarch sitting on the top of the mountain. Of course, on the other side of Nanpo Suazhou, except for Qi Tingji's Dragon Elephant Sword sect. Fu Dekong wanted to be cheeky and asked Chen Pingan to ask if he could meet Lu Chen in the future and help him deliver a sentence, but he was suppressed by this Pushun mountain god just when he thought of it. Just because at that time before Chen Pingan said that he and Lu Chen had a good relationship, there were 4 words, and the grievances were clear. After the out-of-the-way acquaintances were expelled by the Zhuji faction, it actually had little impact. At most, there was no fishing figure by the stream. Next, it was the capital of Qingling Kingdom, which began to formally discuss the lease renewal and bidding of Yushan. At first, the 2 ministers of the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Household of Qingling Kingdom came forward together. The Patriarch of Zhuji Pai Lingxia came down the mountain in person and came here. Bian is in charge of bidding, and there are 2 other sects who are interested in cutting Yushan, but they are not as good as Zhuji sect. On the side of Xinyang Mountain, it is not Xiahou Zan of Shuilong Peak as expected by King Lingguo, but Yuzuan, the master of Yujiao Peak. Therefore, the Minister of Rights said that His Majesty, the Emperor who was busy with state affairs, suddenly became less prudent and came quickly. But soon His Majesty the Emperor began to regret that he should not have made such a trip. Because the 2 immortal manor sects who made up the numbers and mostly wanted to try their luck, quickly withdrew from the bidding for mining and cutting the Jade Mountain, which was regarded as selling a face to the Zhuji sect. It's just that Ling Xie of the Zhuji faction and Xingyang Shan Yubu, 2 people with very different identities in Realm Yunni, shouted the price all the way to a full 80 grain rain money. Yu Perlin looked indifferent, picked up the teacup, blew the tea and said to the patriarch of the Zhuji faction, "It's just a sale, why should Taoist friends make such a battle in the rainy season?" Ling Xie bluntly said, "Sayu Mountain is the foundation of our Zhuji sect, and it is the family business handed down by the founder of the mountain. Without Sayu Mountain, what face would we have to go to the Patriarch's hall to worship incense?" Yu Perlin smiled. From the point of view of the Emperor, who was sitting on pins and needles, if this was the case, the golden core sword immortal of Rainfoot Peak might give up. Never thought that Ling Xie would say a word too much, let alone 80, even if it is 100 or 200 Gu money, we Zhuji faction must keep this family business. Yuper put down the teacup and said with a smile, "Then I'll ask for 199 grain rain money. During the rainy season, you only need to add 1 more piece of grain rain money, you don't need any grain rain money. Quit." As a result, Yu bought a bamboo branch cut Jade Mountain for Xingyang Mountain at a very high premium of 199 grain rain money. As a result, the Zhuji school is only left with the Jizu Mountain in Zushan, but the problem is that the ancestors of the sect are all rebuilt in Sayu Mountain. When the news reached the Zhuji faction to cut Yushan, Guo Huifeng was dumbfounded, and the dozen or so Qi practitioners in the entire assembly hall also looked at each other in dismay. Guo Huifeng's mood was extremely complicated. She actually made an appointment with Zhang Li Lingxie in advance. The latter went to Qingling country this time, and it would be best if he could spend 30 pieces to renew the lease. It is not necessary. But the problem is that Lingxie's approach is not wrong. Deep down in his heart, Guo Huifeng is indeed far more than anyone who hopes to be able to hold the Jade Mountain. It was just that I was worried that Jizushin, who had always hoped to join Xingyang Mountain, would choose to stand by and watch this matter. So Guo Huifeng took the initiative to ask Ling Xie to come forward to negotiate the price. Guo Huifeng was still a little surprised. Although she had an average relationship with Ling Xie, she still wanted to believe that Ling Xie would not be selfish in such a big event, let alone turn his elbows out on such a big event involving the honor and disgrace of a teacher. When Ling Xie returned to the Bamboo Branch sect in the Zushi Hall, Ling Xie revealed an inside story that made many members of the Zushi Hall murmur. Yu Perlin secretly revealed that if we promised to be the descendants of Xingyang Mountain, we could continue to keep Tsuayu Mountain. Guo Huifeng's eyes were sharp, staring at the patriarch of the Jizu Mountain lineage. Ling Xie looked calm and said that she rejected the proposal on the spot. Then Ling Xie said, "Our Bamboo Branch sect can move today. Otherwise we can't get a foothold here just by relying on a chicken-foot mountain. It won't take 100 years and the incense will wither. Why don't we go to the south and find a place to settle down?" Guo Huifeng sighed, "This is the end of the matter and there is no choice. I am afraid that the sword immortals of Xingyang Mountain will not let them move south smoothly. Sayu Mountain is an ancestral family business handed down from generation to generation, and it is the foundation. Once relocated, it is like rootless duckweed. Nowadays, in the south of Aquarius, all countries have been restored or established, and there are many opportunities to be rebuilt. There are indeed many opportunities there. It is not impossible for the Zhuji sect to relocate. A group of Qi practitioners, together with the gods and masters of the ancestors of the past, moved south together, but after all, it was a helpless last resort. Gujianglong, how can it be so good? Guohuifeng is a golden pill. She is not afraid of the disputes on the mountain, but she is afraid of the unfamiliar people, and the Zhuji sect will fall into this family. The apricot tree by the wild creek? There are two types of vassal relationships on the mountain. One is a relatively loose attachment relationship. The Zhuji school and Xinjiang mountain have been like this for hundreds of years. Another example is the Luopao mountain in the north and Zhuchai Island, which was moved from Shujian Lake to Chuzhou Crayfish back from the outside world. It roughly belongs to this kind of relationship. There is also a relationship of up the mountain and down the mountain, in the strict sense. There is still a big difference between the two. The former is more of an ally relationship, while the latter is a real subordinate vassal. In short, it is today's Xinjiang mountain still can't control the candidates for any chairs in the Zhuji sect's patriarch hall, but when the Zhuji sect becomes down the mountain, Xinjiang mountain can completely intervene in the appointment, dismissal, promotion and relegation of all the genealogical cultivators of the Zhuji sect, including the head and the law. Even as long as Xinjiang mountain has an idea, he can directly let Zhufeng Jianxiu bypass the Zhuji sect and enter the Zhuji sect as the head. When the Zhuji sect was preparing to secretly start the relocation, the first-line peak of Zhushan Mountain and Xinjiang Mountain also convened a meeting of the Zhuxi Hall on a regular basis. It's just a matter of discussing the Zhuji faction and spending money to buy the Jade Mountain. It's just a small agenda attached. For a behemoth like Xinjiang Mountain, a small Zhuji faction, the leader is just a golden pill trainer. Nothing at all. According to the results of Xinjiang Mountain's previously established agenda, it is actually the personal intention of the suzerain xuanhuan. It is to send people to Qingling country first. I believe that as long as the price is 50 grain rain money, it will be enough to let Zhuji sect overcome the difficulties. Return. Afterwards, let a certain patriarch Tang Jianxian find Guohuifeng and discuss it with her. If the other party is willing to become his own descendant, Xinjiang Mountain can promise that within 300 years, he will not interfere in the golden and jade genealogy of Zhuji school. At the same time, Xinjiang Mountain will also help to cultivate Zhuji monks. As long as Guohuifeng has suitable candidates, some cultivating embryos with acceptable qualifications can be sent to the peaks of Xinjiang Mountain for cultivation. There is no limit to the number of people. In this way, the Zhuji faction can truly secure its position as the first immortal mansion in Qingling Kingdom. In the end, because of Ling Xie's ignorance coupled with Yu Jiaofeng Yukin's zealousness, making his own opinions, it was equivalent to spending more than 100 grain rain money. This fairy money had to be paid for by Yuqin himself, and waited until the end of the discussion. Yuqin needs to personally send the immortal money to the Zhoushan treasury record file. Yuqin has no objection to this and got up to take orders. In the first-line Peak Patriarch Hall, now the old Patriarch of Full Moon Peak, Xia Yuansui personally serves as the head law of Xinjiang Mountain. On the other hand, Yan Chu of Shilongfeng, the old sword immortal in the nascent soul realm, has changed from the Patriarch of the law to the top position of the treasure house of Xinjiang Mountain. It seems that his position on the mountain is balanced, but it is actually a relegation. But it's better than that Qilingshan Tao Yanba, who was punished to go to think about it behind closed doors for a period of time. Probably this is called different fates in the same realm. Suddenly, Feijian sent a letter to Zhu Shitang. Yan Chu, who received the letter, saw the content, his face changed slightly and he got up and said, "Several young sword cultivators on our side, together with a group of genealogy cultivators from the Zhuji sect, are in that thread." There was some dispute over the boundary between Yushan Yeshi and Chiha River. The Bamboo Emperor asked, "Anyone injured on both sides?" Yan Chu said, "Both sides were slightly injured. We deliberately stopped our hands here and we were more careful about our sense of proportion. Otherwise, one of the Qi trainers from the Zhuji sect would be counted as one, and they would not even want to leave Chiha." Looking at the posture, Zhu Huang was about to ask the cause of the conflict. "Hee, take care of the people, sect master Bamboo, everything is good to talk about Bamboo sword immortal." These humorous sayings, the evaluation of Bamboo Emperor, are all compliments from the outside world of Aquarius Island. Xia Yuansui had already twisted her beard and smiled and said, "This bamboo branch school is not bad, it almost has the spirit of the immortal mansion in the name of Zone." As the Patriarch of Law, This matter must be managed by Xianxia. Of course, the nephew of Xuanhuan is the suzerain. As long as he wants to take care of it, Xianxia is too lazy to take care of it. Each of the vassals of the Xinfu sects wanted to distance themselves from Xinjiang Mountain, and found various reasons for changing their methods, and they did not want to continue to worship up the mountain. Now, even a bamboo branch sect under the nose of Xinjiang Mountain, can't he control it? In the past, the mortal enemy of Xinjiang Mountain was Fenglei Garden, and the owner of the garden, the Yellow River, was already in the wild. Lu Baqiao, who was left behind, was one of the 10 young people selected by Aquarius. After a ceremony, there was another mortal enemy. Luapa Mountain even had a monument erected at the border of Xinjiang Mountain, and Lushur inscribed the sentence, "Go north to Luapa Mountain for 200,000 miles." Now, the younger generation of cultivators in Xinjiang Mountain, especially the sword cultivators from Heaven's favorite sons, how can they still have the face to go out to practice? However, the discussion of Emperor Zhu in this first-line peak patriarchal hall still does not make people disappointed. The cultivators of the genealogy on both sides have restrained a little in the near future, and don't want to clash again. On this day, Guo Huifeng, the head of the Zhuji sect, went to the first-line peak of Xinjiang Mountain alone. This resolute female cultivator of the golden elixir is obviously determined to die. On the Guiyun Tower near Bailudu, as an outdated guest of the Zhuji school, he was actually standing on an observation deck of the Xinjia Inn at that time. There are 3 things that he is more curious about now: whether the Xiahou Jianxian who used to drink at the same table knows about this deliberate plan. Of course, it doesn't matter what the answer is. Then there is Ling Xie, the patriarch of the Bamboo Branch School. When did she hook up with the Xinjiang Mangosteen Emperor? The last thing, of course, is how the Bamboo Emperor cleans up the mess. Qin Pingan didn't think that Xia Yuansui and Yen Chu would have any chance of winning. The 2 old sword immortals might not be worthy to carry shoes for the sect master Zhu Huang. Therefore, the various performances of the Bamboo Emperor are really too weak. If it goes on like this, in terms of common sense, the first-line peaks of the Bamboo Emperor will have to be overtaken by the other peaks. When things go wrong, there must be demons. This is also the reason why Old stopped at Zhuji school and became an outsider here. Which step will it be able to push the Bamboo Emperor to a point of no return? Now it seems that it is difficult, and there seems to be a sign that the situation is one-sided. The reason is very simple. The Emperor Bamboo didn't even make a move to dismantle the move once, which means that once the Emperor Zhu chooses to make a move, I am afraid that the situation will be reversed in an instant. After thinking about it, Qin Pingan was still unwilling to spend the unjust money, so he reported the name of Zhou Shou to Gyunla, and wanted to stay in that type room. Zhou Shou spent a year on his wallet. Now Gyunla has changed the shopkeeper, but only hearing the name Zhou Shou from the other side makes his face pale with fright, and directly led the distinguished guest to stay in the frame room. Before leaving the room, he only said that if the guest officer had any needs, Gyunla would try his best to satisfy them. It's true that he was bitten by a snake for 10 years and was afraid of the rope. First, Zhou Shou and a boy in white with a mole between his eyebrows. They bought a 1-year-old house for 1 year. The current suzerain Lu Xianying lived here, so there was the questioning sword. Now one more. The closest one to Guiyun Tower is the Qingwu Peak. Of course, it is not a watery person, and the mountain does not have long legs and no nests. Qin Pingan was still lying on the rattan chair and began to close his eyes. This place is too far from the first-line peak of Zushan, and the realm is not enough. Anyway, I can't see the scene of the sword light. As for the head of the Bamboo Branch sect, she will definitely not have any surprises during this trip to Xinjiang Mountain. Qin Pingan suddenly opened his eyes, and saw the back of a Taoist priest wearing a lotus crown, sitting on the railing muttering. Qin Pingan asked, "Master Lu is so idle?" Lu Qin turned his head and said with a smile, "The person who should be looking for has been found, and the thing that needs to be done is finished. This is not about to go back to the house thinking about the beginning and the end. I must say goodbye to you." Qin Pingan said, "There is wine in the house, you can get it by yourself." Although it was strange in his heart, Qin Pingan did not ask. Lu Qin should have brought Zhu Lu back to the world of Qingming. At this time, it is reasonable to say that they should have been in Baiyujing. Or is this Lu Qin, in front of you, just one of the 5 dreams and 7 hearts that remain in the vast world? Lu Qin leaned back and wanted to do a dashing backflip. He probably misestimated the height of the railing and couldn't afford to fall to the ground, so a carp stood up straight and ran to the house to get 2 pots of ready-made fairy brew. It turned out to be the immortal brewing of Changchun Palace, which has no market price. Gyunla is really willing to pay for it. This is considered to be the return of the immortal money for 1 year? If Chen Shanzhu made a few more trips to the Yunlu, should he not just close the door and pull it down? Lu Qin hooked his feet and threw a chair in the house to the observation deck outside the door. His figure fell on the chair, and gently threw a pot of wine to Qin Pingan. Qin Pingan didn't drink but just kept it in his sleeves. Lu Qin smiled and said, "This farce in the nest, the truth is very similar to the process you guessed." Qin Pingan asked, "Where is the difference?" Lu Qin raised his head and drank wine, just like drinking water when he was thirsty. He raised the back of his hand and wiped his mouth and said, "Pindao is busy drinking, too lazy to think about it, not to mention that he can't tell for a while. Why don't we take a trip to the River of Time?" Qin Pingan said, "The Bamboo Emperor has long known that I am in the Bamboo Branch School?" Lu Qin smiled and said, "Master Zhu is just a sword fairy, and he is not a fortune-teller who is a prophet. Do you know? As for whether the Emperor Zhu guessed this, Pindao is not clear. After all, it is not the roundworm in his stomach." Qin Pingan sat up. The two walked in a long river of time, upstream like turning the pages of a book upside down. When they saw the content of interest, they spread the book and read the text on that page. They first came to the Qingling State official ship on a river, inside and outside the house, separated by a bamboo curtain, and of course Xia Yuansui carefully sailed the Wanyan ship, a landscape prohibition set in advance. The two old sword immortals of Xinjiang Mountain, Xia Yuansui of Full Moon Peak and Yan Chu of Shuilong Peak, had previously discussed secretly on this Qi River, and the content of the discussion involved the replacement of several chairs on the mountain. Lu Qin lifted a corner of the bamboo curtain, looked into the house and said with a smile, "The two old swordsmen are really old and strong, and they have lofty aspirations. If they were just talking about things, they actually made them." The stone tablet on the border, Xinjiang Mountain. You can keep it. The meaning of Zhangjiao Lu is very simple. Bamboo Emperor is the suzerain of Xinjiang Mountain. In the future, there is still a certain hope that the boundary monument will be removed and someone else will be the new suzerain. Don't think about it. It can be seen that Lu Qin is also more optimistic about the Emperor Bamboo. Lu Qin took out 3 immortal coins from his sleeves, clasped them in his hands and squeaked, "What do you think is in my hands?" Qin Pingan said, "Be patient." Lu Qin was choked for a while and it was hard to talk to stupid people. He missed smart people. He was really killed by smart people. He felt that it was more interesting to talk to stupid people. For example, Chui Ye's patience is 100 years. Jing Zhezhong's patience has lasted for 3,000 years. According to the plan of the two old swordsmen with real power in the house, the first step, Zhuji sent a monk with enough weight to buy Yushan, and in a fit of rage, he returned to the mountain gate, and openly said that he wanted to unilaterally remove the vassal status, and Zheng Yangshan completely separated the relationship. The second step is to find a few suitable young sword cultivators to create a turmoil with the Zhuji faction. You don't need to kill anyone, just get hurt. I will definitely seek justice with Xinjiang Mountain, or to be precise with the Emperor Zhu, then Xinjiang Mountain will give her an explanation. Just use her and the Zhuji faction to kill chickens and warn the monkeys, support the Jizu Mountain lineage and cooperate with Xinjiang. The mountain signed the contract of Shangzong down the mountain. In the past, the Mountain Alliance and Water Oath, on the mountain were all 5 mountains of various countries, or the righteous gods of rivers and waters. Now it is more convenient. The third step is Xinjiang Mountain, from Yujiao Feng Yuqin, this young sword immortal who is very prestigious among the young disciples of Xinjiang Mountain, as the of the first-line peak ancestors, can take the lead in attacking the Bamboo Emperor. Then it was Xia Yuansui who went out in person. Yan Chu agreed, and together they suggested that Emperor Zhu take the initiative to give up the position of suzerain, and the new position was arranged. You Emperor Zhu, go to the Down Mountain Huang, which is located in the boundary of the Zishan Mountain in Zhongyue. Bamboo Sword Sect as the head. Saying it was a suggestion was actually forcing the Emperor Zhu to leave the first-line peak and obediently go to the Huangzujian sect to retire. As long as the Emperor Bamboo leaves Xinjiang Mountain, Xia Yuansui has a series of methods to make the Emperor Bamboo feel uncomfortable going down the mountain. Lu Qin walked into the cabin sneakily, and while listening to the two old swordsmen planning a grand career there, he stretched out his hand to flick someone's forehead, or pretended to punch the back of the head. Qin Pingan stepped straight into the house in one step. The bamboo curtain blocking the way was useless. On the road of life, Qin Pingan has seen 2 people who look alike but are actually diametrically opposite. Just talking about the people around him are Gu Kan and Li Huai, Cui Dongshan and Lu Qin. Lu Qin seemed to be tired of playing, so he squatted on the ground and looked up at that Xia Yuansui, probably looking at the old sword fairy and counting the skin lines on his face. Qin Pingan Luchin smiled and asked, "They are so courageous, aren't they afraid that Bamboo Emperor will enter the immortal realm one day? Turn around and settle with their new and old accounts?" Qin Pingan said, "Let's get the benefits first and then talk about the future." Luchin nodded, "That's right." Qin Pingan asked suddenly, "How can you pull that bamboo curtain?" Luchin said solemnly, "High realm, great ability, handsome appearance, go out and be kind to people, never say hard words, be careful to sail the ship of 10,000 years. Qin Pingan interrupted Headmaster Lu's self-bragging and asked, "Are we going to continue upstream or downstream and go back again?" Luchin asked in return, "Look at the other book. For example, is Little God from the sect Master Xuanhuan, or Guixianzi from the Zhuji sect? Or do you want to read both?" Qin Pingan said, "No, we can just stare at the two old sword immortals." Luchin said helplessly, "Isn't it too boring?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Headmaster Lu's patience." Luchin murmured, "Pindao is soft-hearted and can't hear nice things the most." After that, the two came to the full moon peak. In the middle of the night, the full moon was hanging in the air, and the bright moonlight was like snow covering the ground. Luchin stood in a viewing pavilion with his arms wrapped around his sleeves. Sighed, "The young man here is practicing swordsmanship, like a bride painting her eyebrows and dressing up, with 100 kinds of embellishments. Her appearance is charming, but there is no fierce woman." Luchin took Qin Pingan to a forbidden place. The small ancestral hall enshrined the tablets of the gods of the ancestors of the full moon peak lineage. Xianxia silently worshipped the incense here. Luchin leaned against the door, and when Xianxia had passed the incense, the old man gently closed the door and strode away. Luchin smiled and asked, "How selfish do you think Xianxia is?" Qin Pingan said, "Maybe Xianxia doesn't even know that." Luchin said, "If you say that the authorities are fans, you and I are just bystanders." Qin Pingan said, 10 is 5, 6 is 1. Luchin touched his palm and smiled, "It's weird, it's wonderful." Qin Pingan said, "I'd like to trouble Headmaster Lu to go back and look at the content of the discussion at the first line peak." Before this, Xianxia had a series of foreshadowing. For example, the old patriarch once in the patriarchal hall suggested that all disciples of the peaks, as long as they are swordsmen, regardless of realm or age, as long as they are willing, they can follow him. The old guy who didn't leave the customs for a long time, together through the return channel, traveled to the wild world, and killed the monster with swords there. No matter whether he accumulated enough military exploits, he helped Jinyang Mountain and the Confucian Temple to seek a place in the next sect. At least it can reverse Ejo Xianfa's perception of Jinyang Mountain. As for him, Xianxia, as long as the sect master Zhu Huang is willing to nod, through this matter, Full Moon Peak will change the peak owner on the same day. In other words, Xianxia didn't think about returning to Aquarius Island and Jinyang Mountain alive. Therefore, the old sword cultivators of Zhufeng, who had been suffocating their stomachs for a long time, agreed to this matter one by one, and they were all willing to follow Xia Zushi to the wilderness, learn from Manue Peak, and change the peak master. The sect master Zhu Huang, who was just caught off guard by this suggestion, still used a trick, saying that it was a long-term plan. In this way a judgment is made. One is impressive, the other has no suspense and is still disappointing. This has made the sect master Zhu Huang, whose personal reputation has fallen to the bottom of the valley, more and more lonely and unpopular. Cowardly and incompetent, empty and bloodless, Jinyang Mountain is indeed a family unfortunate, and unfortunately such a suzerain is spread. Zhufeng Xianfu various dojos, there is a lot of discussion and they start to turn over old accounts. For example, it seems that when Bamboo Emperor was in nascent Soul Realm, he never dared to break arms with Li Tuanjing, who was in the same realm, Fengliuan, until he finally became Yupu. In the face of two young people, Qin Pingan and Lu Xianyang, he still didn't dare to fart. If the sect master Zhu Huang, who is extremely virtuous, covets power, and is unwilling to let go, then it is no wonder that Xianxia the uncle has to clear the door for the ancestors. He will join forces with Yan Chu on the bright side and Tao Yanba hiding in the dark, these two sword cultivators in the nascent soul realm, and ask the Emperor's sword and bamboo together. Anyway, the reputation of Jinyang Mountain is not much worse now. And when Xianxia successfully takes over as sect master, that Zhufeng Jianxiu is willing to go to the wild and kill demons, you just go. Luchin snapped his fingers. The two came to the renovated first-line peak patriarch's hall. Luchin simply sat on the threshold, like a snake crossing the road, with his back to the gate, his hands clasped the back of his head, his right eye saw the sword fairies gathered in the house, and his left eye saw the clouds gather outside the house without delay. Qin Pingan just crossed the threshold and walked in the ancestral hall of other people's homes, occasionally bypassing those extremely thick red lacquer columns, which belong to old wood and new construction. This is the strong family background of an old immortal mansion. In the treasure house, a lot of Yuzhang County giant trees and Pushun sandalwood are stored. If you sell it casually at the current price, it will be a huge profit. Qin Pingan walked back to the gate, nodded to Lu Qin and could go back. Lu Qin stood up, patted his with his sleeve, glanced at the sect master in the house who seemed to be sitting on wax and said with a smile, "Jijun is not small, it must not be a thing in the pool." The two parties returned to the Yunlu Inn. Watching the fun is not too big, Lu Qin stretched out his finger in the direction of Yixianfeng and said, "Guohui Feng is almost at the foot of the mountain." The smiling headmaster Lu moved his fingers to the top of the full moon peak. The bamboo emperor has found xianxia. There is also a terrified Shilongfeng Yanchu, the old Jianxiu who sits on the third seat in the Xinjiang Mountain Patriarch Hall. At this moment he is terrified and stares at the movements on the side of the full moon peak. Yanchu was always ready to cooperate with the sect master xuanhuan, who had only one request, that Xia Yuansui could not be allowed to leave the realm of full moon peak alive. If Yanchu couldn't stop Xia Yuansui from escaping, he would be guilty of a crime. Yanchu could accompany that Tao Yanba from Qiuling Mountain to retreat and think about it. The first reason why Yanchu was willing to take risks was, of course, that Xia Yuansui had benefited him and Shui Longfeng enough after the event was completed. According to the earliest idea of the old swordsman of Yuaning, of course the ancestor Xia Yuansui was the new mountain master of Xinjiang Mountain, and then according to the agreement the old ancestor Xia gave up the palm chair that was not warm with his but Yanchu taking advantage of the situation to fill the gap at the same time as the master of Zong, he went down the mountain and served as the master. At the same time, old ancestor Xia also promised Yanchu that he would spare no expense in financial and material resources. Even if he spends money he would help Yanchu create an upper 5 realm, and the secret sword veins mastered by the first line peak of Xuanhuan, all of them will be taught to Yanchu together. In this way the time and place are right and people are available. In the future, it is no longer an extravagant hope for Yanchu to enter the Jade Realm. As for the current Huangzujian sect, when Yanchu becomes the headmaster, it will definitely change its name. According to Xia Yuanqui's layout, when he becomes the suzerain and enters the first-tier peak, the first meeting will be held, and the swordsmen of all peaks will be ordered to go to the wild. Help Earth Immortal Peak Master, they will be very willing to make achievements and make a career in the foreign battlefield over there, even at the risk of their lives. In this way, Xinjiang Mountain still has a hope, and can make Xiaoshan become the first of the sect by virtue of the merit book accumulated in the Confucian Temple. In the end, like a certain rival, he has both upper and lower sects at the same time. Old ancestor Xia did things with foresight and foresight. Being able to be a suzerain, even the next suzerain, is already very content for Yanchu. It's just that they made thousands of calculations and they were still one move away from chess and miscalculated. Yanchu's words became a prophecy. The young Jindan sword of Yu Jiafeng who cultivated the Perlin, was indeed a little who was born with a rebellious bone. After the event was completed, he could get the Huangzujian sect palm according to his merits. Master Law doesn't want to, secretly told the sect master Zhu Huang. Then there is the Qiu Lingshan Tao Yanba who has been closed to the mountain and thought behind closed doors. Today he is ready to join forces with himself to attack Xia Yuansui. Tao Yanba on the Qiuling mountain side is actually not that much better. Didn't you say yesterday that your bamboo emperor just seriously injured his uncle Xia Yuansui, let him fall to earth immortal and die of old age? Why did Emperor Zhu directly speak from his heart when he was climbing the mountain today, and asked him Tao Yanba and Yanchu to prepare to collect the body for Xia Yuansui? The second big accident happened again on the top of Xinjiang Mountain. The dojo of the old patriarch Xia Yuansui, a full moon peak, was forcibly beaten by 2 sword immortals of the upper 5 realms into a Kawa Peak. The master's uncle and the master's nephew on the golden jade genealogy of the ancestral hall, the same jade pure realm, the same Xinjiang Mountain swordsmanship, the final swordsmanship level, but there is a difference between clouds and mud. From the bamboo emperor ascending the full moon peak, meeting with his uncle Xia Yuansui, and then to the sword light shining all over the peaks, and finally the bamboo emperor left the full moon peak alone with Yufeng, saying that he would discuss the matter immediately. In fact, it's less than a stick of incense. A thrilling questioning sword came to an end, and the Emperor Zhu was still wearing a clean robe, not stained with fine dust. He didn't use his sword directly to go to the patriarchal hall at the top of the mountain. Instead, the arc of the sword light suddenly fell, and he came to the foot of the first line of the mountain in an instant. He landed in the air, the sword returned to its sheath, and the bamboo emperor smiled and said, "Master Gua." Gua Huifeng was stunned and speechless. The bamboo emperor smiled and said, "Cleaning up the door, bullying the master and destroying the ancestors, I have to do it, let the head of wuxia joke." Gua Huifeng was stunned. The bamboo emperor said bluntly, "I know the inside story of the turmoil that Yu Jiaofeng Yuqin and Yu Ling Zhonglu fought over to cut Jade Mountain, the place where Yeshi and Chiha meet, and this matter is our Xinjiang Mountain's loss, so next, there will be an urgent discussion on the first line of the peak. One of the agendas is to discuss the ownership of Yushan, and to determine the relationship between Zhuji and Xinjiang Mountain. I am going to let you spend 30 grain rain money to buy back the cutting." Yushan, at the same time maintaining the relationship between the Zhuji sect and our old vassal, at least when I was the suzerain, it will never change and I will never let the Zhuji sect be reduced to the worry of going down the mountain. Gua Huifeng nodded silently. Like a dream. The bamboo emperor smiled and said, "Gua sect leader, we are a gentleman's contract. We can make a verbal agreement, or to be on the safe side, both parties sign a paper contract?" Gua Huifeng looked at Emperor Zhu, was silent for a moment, exhaled a long breath and said solemnly, "I trust sect master Zhu." The bamboo emperor nodded and said, "Then it's settled." Gua Huifeng said, "Sect master Zhu is busy in advance, so I will return to the Zhuji sect." The bamboo emperor smiled and said, "Distant relatives are not as good as close neighbors. We welcome sect master Gua to come here often as a guest in the future." Yan Chu and Tao Yanba hid their figures, used a secret sword pulse escape method, and went to the full moon peak. Seeing the old man who died sitting on the ground with the broken sword on his knees, blood was all over his body, and his fatal wound was between his eyebrows. There was a hole the size of a copper coin and blood was gurgling. Tao Yanba let out a long sigh with a sad expression on his face. He didn't know if he saw this scene, Zhuji Finhui sighed, or he was sad, worried about his own fate and whether he would follow in his footsteps. Yan Chu had an expressionless face, and bowed his hands to the old man in salute. Yan Chu squatted down again, and gently used his sleeve to help old ancestor wipe off the blood on his face. On the other side of the cloud tower, Lu Chen asked, "Should we get closer and watch a discussion in the Zushi Hall?" Chen Pingan said, "I'm afraid that Headmaster Lu will anoint the soles of his feet with oil. Once he's gone, he will remove the blindfold and leave me alone in the ancestral master's hall." Lu Chen laughed and said, "This is a bit embarrassing." After restraining his laughter, Lu Chen sighed, "It's a pity that the moon is cloudy and sunny, but it's a pity that the ink has changed from thick to light. There are green mountains, peaks and peaks. The nearby mountains are rich in dark green, a little farther is verdant, farther away is light cyan, and the farthest is gray. The love and scenery of the world, the pearls and hibiscus are gorgeous, and the clouds are passing by." In the first line peak patriarch hall, Emperor Bamboo sat on the chair of the sect master and said, "There are only 3 things to discuss today, everyone just listen. The first thing is that Xia Yuansui is dead, and the position of the peak master of Full Moon Peak is temporarily led by his Bamboo Emperor." Bamboo Emperor didn't even explain why Xia Yuansui died. The infighting on Full Moon Peak asked what the reason for the sword was, and whether it was necessary to polish the Xinjiang Mountain Chronicle. Not a word was mentioned. The second thing is related to the Bamboo Branch School. The last thing, the sword cultivators of the various peaks in Xinjiang Mountain, led by the new head Law Yanchu, rushed to the wild world, and together they went through the East China Sea, returned to the ruins passage to the Sunfall Ferry in the wild world. Among them, the Chioling Mountain sword cultivators headed by Tao Yanba belonged to making meritorious deeds and must first make up for their deeds. As for sect master Bamboo Emperor himself, he was going to retreat to break through the realm. No matter whether the retreat was successful or not, Bamboo Emperor would personally go to the wild battlefield. A vulgar man under the mountain, whoever has the blood, must have the will to fight. The Bamboo Emperor said indifferently, "Cultivation of Taoism in the mountains, since it is a sword cultivator, it is right to kill demons." Today may be the most simple and clear discussion in the Zushi Hall in the history of Xinjiang Mountain. The Bamboo Emperor was really fed up with the intrigues within the mountains and between the peaks that would only hold back their legs. Since it's a sword cultivator, isn't it good to practice swords well? The sword veins in Xinjiang Mountain may not be a big deal in the entire 9 continents, but looking at the Aquarius continent, it is enough for a young sword cultivator to become an earth immortal step by step. Of course, Emperor Bamboo didn't have the slightest liking for Luopao Mountain. If it wasn't for his lack of realm as a pure sword cultivator and a sect master, he would have returned to Luopao Mountain long ago. Now, on Aquarius Mountain, isn't it all said that a Luopao Mountain can be regarded as a monk of the 14th realm? If there are 14 realms today, the Emperor Bamboo does not need tomorrow, and will appear alone at the gate of Luopao Mountain today. If you demolish my first line Peak Patriarch Hall, I will demolish your Jisei Peak Patriarch Hall. It's just that Emperor Bamboo's idea is very simple. To wrestle with people, you must have capital. Now that you have a dead end and a feud, you can't just rely on your passion and anger. Otherwise it would be like two enemy families with clearly disparate strengths. The two sides confronted each other on the street. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, every time one party said something loudly, he had to get a slap in the face. What are you trying to do? Is it just to let passers-by watch the fun and enjoy it more? Lu Qin sat on the chair, holding the wine bowl in one hand, and at the same time stretched his neck to look at the peak of the first line, where the voice of the Emperor Bamboo in the Patriarch Hall was like raindrops falling into Master Lu's wine bowl, the rain beating. The water surface of the spring pond is normal, with ripples and clear words. Lu Qin smiled and asked, "Let's guess that Emperor Bamboo's retreat this time is to heal his wounds, or is he trying to break through?" Qin Pingan said, "It doesn't matter. The last time I watched the salute and asked about the sword, the Bamboo Emperor must have been hiding it. But even if the Bamboo Emperor didn't hide it, it wouldn't change anything." Lu Qin suffocated the drink in the bowl, wiped the corner of his mouth with the back of his hand, and said with a hilarious smile, "Is it a bit more boring than the imperial study in Dali's capital, a bit less in-depth, but a little bit more domineering in terms of momentum?" Chen Pingan lay on the rattan chair, reaching out and tapping the jug lightly. Lu Qin snorted, "It's not good. Zhu Zongzhu is coming to our side to get close as expected of a sword immortal, such a keen consciousness." Chen Pingan knew that Lu Qin deliberately leaked the trace, but didn't say anything. When the Emperor Zhu came here, he was accompanied by a very important chess figure. It was xianxia, the contemporary master of the Bamboo Branch School of Jizu Mountain. Chen Pingan sat up and shook the jug in his hand. "Meet again, Sect Master Zhu." As for what the headmaster Lu looked like in the eyes of xuanhuan and xianxia, God knows. The Bamboo Emperor bowed his hands and said with a smile, "Meet again." Bamboo Emperor only noticed a trace of unusual energy here, and the source was in Gyunla, so he knew it. Xianxia was still kept in the dark. She didn't even know that this young cultivator was an outsider of her own Bamboo Branch sect. "I just heard that my apprentice Liang Yuping had said that there was an old guest in Kaiyushan who had a drink with Shilongfeng Xiaozan with her." Chen Pingan looked at Xianxia and said with a smile, "I have seen Ling Zhanglu." Xianxia thought about it for a while and used a statement that was not easy to make mistakes. Including Guo Huifeng, it is not clear that her senior sister Xianxia, who had been taking refuge in Xinjiang Mountain a few years ago, was actually only one person, the sword immortal Bamboo Emperor. At the age of a young girl, she entered the Zhuji school and became a direct disciple of the Jizu Mountain lineage, which was the arrangement of the Zhuhuang. Later, Xianxia did not compete with Guo Huifeng for the position of the head, and it was also the secret advice of the Zhuhuang. If it is said that this yard-cleaning infighting before the dust settles, Xia Yuansui, who seems to be the most senior in Xinjiang Mountain, made the first move on the chessboard, and there was no problem with the chess moves at the back, but in fact, it was more on the earlier and larger chessboard. The Emperor Bamboo had already started to make moves. Tao Yanba took the initiative to contact Xia Yuansui, which was originally the arrangement of the Bamboo Emperor. Therefore, it is not wrong to say that Xia Yuansui lost the slightest bit. Xianxia was about to go into the house and bring a chair over. It was for Sect Master Zhu. Of course she herself had to stand to entertain guests. Never thought of a gust of wind beside her, it turned out that the young Taoist priest ran into the house and also carried a chair. Wait until Zhu Huang took the chair in Xianxia's hand. Xianxia saw the Taoist priest handing out a chair to him. The Taoist priest smiled brightly. Xianxia wanted to politely reject the other party, but the Bamboo Emperor smiled and said, "Just sit." The Taoist introduced himself. The name of the trail contains the word Kai. Zhu Huang and Xianxia waited for the next sentence. The Taoist just stared at the two of them. Chen Pingan explained, "The surname and the first name together, the Taoist priest is called Kai. What is the Taoist name, anonymous?" Lu Qin nodded vigorously. Xianxia mistook the young man for a man who had attained the Tao with his skills in Yen Yen, who might be an old friend of Sect Master Zhu. Wearing a fishtail crown on his head, is he a Taoist priest? Bamboo Emperor didn't explain anything to her, anyway the words in his heart were meaningless. The Bamboo Emperor was not curious as to who this strange Taoist priest wearing a hibiscus crown was. Qin Pingan asked, "How does Sect Master Zhu reward Yu for his meritorious deeds?" The Bamboo Emperor smiled and said, "This kind of person cannot be kept. The better the talent, the stronger the backbone." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Don't say anything like this." Bamboo Emperor laughed dumbly, but did not continue to explain anything. It may be that he has been told something on his mind, or it may be that it is useless to talk to an outsider. Xia became more and more confused. Isn't this person a friend of Sect Master Bamboo? Qin Pingan stood up. "Sect Master Bamboo, I believe we will not meet again in the near future." The Taoist priest let out a long sigh, as if to breathe a sigh of relief for the Bamboo Emperor. After that, Qin Pingan and Lu Qin left the cloud tower together, walked down the mountain and walked to the noisy Bailudu. Lu Qin Tiskate wondered, everyone is floating on the mountain and mosquitoes gather into thunder. The future Xinjiang mountain should not be underestimated. Qin Pingan asked, "Did Xia like the Emperor Bamboo very early?" Lu Qin said angrily, "This kind of love between men and women, if you ask the poor way, you are asking the right person. I'm really ashamed, the ability of this profession has to be reversed from the realm of the poor." 15th floor, Pindao is on the 2nd floor. Qin Pingan didn't ask any more questions. Lu Qin rubbed his chin. Fortunately, Pindao has seen Zhuran. I think she fell in love with xuanhuan at first sight when she was a young girl. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Good knowledge." Nowadays, who doesn't know that the hidden officer of the Great Wall of Sword Qi has a sword-raising gourd called luoquang, which is filled with the yin and yang strange words flying sword? Lu Qin felt that he had to find his way back. There is a kind of ignorance in the world which is the most beautiful. How to say? For example, because they are young and ignorant, their love is full of knots. Teenagers and girls, why should they understand love when they are young, and what they understand at that time must not be love? In a word, insight. Pindao once had a quarrel with a good friend, whether it was a flash in the pan, whether it was a comedy or a tragedy. Pindao thought it was the former, and that friend Gaogu of Huayang Palace he thought it was just the opposite. Qinping, what do you think? Give me a comment? There's no right or wrong, the answer is just a matter of personal perception. Is it a glance at 1,000 years or 1,000 years? Lu Qin's eyes widened and he said with admiration, "At this moment, the poor man has run out of words and he must be amazed." So Qin Pingan felt that a certain idea should be forgotten. Worried that Fu Shanshan really saw Lu Qin, it was either that Lord Yi was fond of dragons, or that he was greatly disappointed. Could it be that it would cause Headmaster Lu to lose an admirer in vain? Looking at the backs of the two walking down the mountain, Xia stood leaning on the railing. She turned her head and asked in her heart, "Why did the Taoist priest of Xingao Zone come here with you?" The Bamboo Emperor looked as usual, shook his head and said, "It's not very clear." Was Lu Qin. Apart from this Baiyujing third headmaster, who would dare to travel abroad and wear a hibiscus crown and a fishtail crown casually for any Taoist priest? Lu Qin asked, "Or go back to the bamboo branch school?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "He'll stay for a few more days." Lu Qin smiled and said, "The egret crosses the egret and flies, the bamboo branch school raps and sings the bamboo branch poem, the world is peaceful and ingenious, and a group of egrets ascends to the blue sky." Qin Pingan was silent for a moment. With so much knowledge, why bother with limericks? Lu Qin said, "Learn from you." Qin Pingan said angrily, "Go away." Lu Qin smiled and said, "Okay. Shape into a rainbow light and leave it alone." Wearing a lotus crown on his head, he went on a leisurely tour, and the Taoist priests in blue robes were soaring into the sky. Taoist Lu Qin, such a romantic figure, cannot be without one in the world and there cannot be two. Longquan Sword Sect, Yue Peak, where the sect master Lu is located. At the dinner table today, Lu Xianying was nibbling on the duck leg and asked vaguely, "Tai Smith Ruan, why don't you participate in the discussion in the capital? You, the chief worshipper of the Dali dynasty, are very ineffective." Dong Gu and the others are not at the table today, they are busy. They deserve to be out of luck. Ruan Qiong said directly, "You are not suitable to be the chief worshipper." He didn't know the apprentice yet. Lu Xianying threw the duck leg bone on the table. "What's the matter, look down on people?" Ruan Qiong said, "Students, articles hate life, and it is difficult to do academics in the officialdom. It is similar to practice in the mountains. Jianxia is practicing swordsmanship. These days your blacksmith Ruan, in addition to casting iron and swords, often comes to Yui Peak to show up, which is a rare thing. Anyway, it was just beating around the bush to remind Lu Xianying to order more snacks for the wedding. With such diligence, Lu Xianying mistakenly thought that he was not the illegitimate son of blacksmith Xuan. The round-faced girl in cotton-padded clothes, whose pseudonym is Xuanhuan, comforted, "It doesn't matter if you are not the chief worshipper. The book doesn't say that, not to mention that there are no confidants in the future and no one in the world knows you." Lu Xianying said, "If a scholar deceives a scholar, you will believe it." The cotton-padded girl nodded, "That's right." Lu Xianying laughed and said, "I believe it because I am a scholar." Yu Qianyue rolled her eyes and lowered her head to cook the rice. Lu Xianying said righteously, "He's not even a sage of the academy, not Qin Pingon." Ruan Xiong put down his chopsticks, got up and left. Tongyi's Hao Qingping sword sect, the Changchundong Tian on the Mishue Peak of Zushan. As the Jianghu Immortal Mansion, where Qin Shan's private Taoist temple is located, only the doors and windows on the top floor are closed at the highest point of the Taoist mountain. There are no landscape restrictions on the floors downstairs. However, in the past, only millet grains would come here to climb high and enjoy the scenery. As for Chai Wu's children who practiced here, they still did not dare to break into the forbidden area. Chai Wu was worried that he would not drink alcohol in the future, and the rest, the kendo embryos of the Great Wall of Sword Chi, are worried that the big white goose who is the most respectful to the teacher, will give them small shoes. In fact, the interior decoration of the top floor is very simple, with a futon, a table and a few incense burners. Qin Pingon left the place at that time, but he did not take away the few books and a pile of bamboo slips with characters engraved on them. In addition, there are some fairy money left, which are all snow money, but they are not piled up like books but neatly arranged. If you look closely, you will find that on each snow money, there are teeny small case lettering, and the name and date are written separately. There are still several square seals on the table, either in Bai Jiangxian's inscription or in Wan Jiangxian's inscription, but they were all left by Qin Pingon himself. For example, there is one side seal, which is fried pork with winter bamboo shoots. There is also, go and go back. And white hair is still a beauty. There is also the highest seal on the side, with the bottom of the 4 characters engraved low, as if the text and the tabletop have met face to face for a long time, staring at each other. Second hometown. The discussion in the imperial study in the capital of Dali is drawing to a close. The emperor glanced at the bamboo slips on the table, and the issues above were almost discussed. Unconsciously, it took nearly an hour. "Song," he said with a smile, "that's all for today's discussion and everyone who has worked hard to come here." Fan Junmao, who was bored in the second half of the meeting, received an amnesty. "Song," he said, "today's discussion content, I hope everyone will not spread it out when they go back." Fan Junmao has raised his buttocks, waiting for His Majesty the Emperor to say, "Dismiss the meeting." As a result, she found that His Majesty the Emperor, and many colleagues in the Shanshui officialdom in the house were all looking at her. Song, he smiled and said, "Fan Shanjun, you have some work to do." Fan Junmao looked blank. "Huh? This discussion, item by item, has nothing to do with me at all, so why is it workable?" Fan Junmao squinted at the mountain of his own prince, the family of the king of the mountain god. You squeaked quickly to remind yourself if you missed something. Wangwan's face was helpless. The old minister of the Ministry of War opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Your Majesty hopes that Fan Shanjun will leave the house and not say anything. Let me just give an example, not to mention the national teacher who is not the national teacher." Fan Junmao snorted. What was she thinking about? Just as he was about to stand up, he immediately turned his head to look at the chair, wanting the new national teacher of Dali to conclude today's discussion. Qin Pingon lightly clasped his fists and said with a smile, "I borrowed a sentence from the ancients, and each of them will work hard, and they will share the same wind in 1,000 miles." As His Majesty the Emperor and Dali Guosher stood up from their chairs, the room almost simultaneously stood up. At the door, Jiang Shangzhen participated in this kind of discussion for the first time, and his was almost numb. "It doesn't matter, I won't come next time. Isn't Miss Ye going to serve as the second seat soon? Let her come to the door." A group of high-ranking landscape gods with light footsteps filed out. Under the leadership of the in python clothing, they went to the square outside the house, and then they each returned to the Shanshui dojo. Of course, it doesn't prevent them from visiting each other. Chao Yong hesitated for a while, but he still didn't chat with the Marquis of Changchun in his heart. Today the Bixiao Palace handed over the quota. Chao Yong believes that there will be no shortage of opportunities to thank him in the future. Wei Bo stood under the eaves, not in a hurry to return to Piyun Mountain. Fan Junmao said with a smile, Jun Wei Shan, no, you have to be called the God of Night Tournament. After the entitlement ceremony is over, do you want to hold another night tour banquet? Wei Bo smiled and said, it's better to hold one before the ceremony and another after the ceremony. Fan Junmao gave Wei Bo a thumbs up, it's really yours. Inside the house, Song He pulled Qin Pingan and chatted a few words. Both ministers were present. In the corridor outside the house, Jiang Shangzhen stood stupidly with Xiaomo and Xiego. The mountain owner said that he would go to the Ministry of War Yamen and then go back to Luopao Mountain. Nangsanfeng and Kejiao Lane on both sides of a 1,000-step corridor in the capital of Dali are crowded with government offices. Song He said, the national teacher said that erecting a monument on the mountain is a measure to help the bottom of the mountain. There are gods on the mountain, and the mortal masters at the bottom of the mountain are destined to be unable to understand the bottom line by themselves, so there must be a rule to let the mountain go up and down the mountain. They each follow the rules. As long as Chuiyu is mentioned, the emperor is still habitually referred to as Guosher, and when it comes to Qin Pingan, it is Qin Guosher. Qin Pingan nodded and said, it won't make people at the foot of the mountain dare to be angry. The old Shang Shu walked out of the imperial study with a cane and said with a smile, old sect master Jiang, just chat a few words? Jiang Shangzhen moved and smiled, it's easy to talk. The old man sat on the other side of the steps, and Jiang Shangzhen sat next to the old man. Soon Zhao Duanjin also left the imperial study and went straight to the office of the Ministry of Rites. The old man smiled and asked, old sect master Jiang, will you feel bored when you participate in this kind of discussion? Jiang Shangzhen said, feast your eyes, how can you be boring? The old man nodded, the literati are underappreciated, and the beauty is hidden. Most people don't think it is worth seeing, but a master like the old sect master Jiang is very different. Jiang Shangzhen's eyes lit up, some chatting, could it be that he has met someone in the same way? If you are chatting like this, old Shangshu, someone from Zhou will be lifted up. Sure enough, the more the two sides chatted, the more they hit it off. When Qin Pingan and Emperor Song He walked outside the corridor, Chief Zhou was lowering his voice and telling the old Shangshu the difference between love and desire between men and women. The old Shangshu sat slightly crooked, posing as if he was listening. The former is only the Tao was ordinary at that time. One is, after the fact, only the ordinary. When the old Shangshu heard this, he smiled knowingly, this body is old unless the dream of spring is as heavy as a teenager. Jiang Shangzhen whispered to him, saying that there is a panacea in the blessed land of my cloud cave, which is cheap and good. In the dark of the night, a young Taoist came to the stone monument secretly, and seeing that there was no one around, he reached out and patted the head of the monument lightly. Good, it's getting stronger. In the future, if Xinjiang Mountain is fortunate enough to have a good seedling, he can persuade Luopao Mountain to remove this stone tablet with an upright questioning sword. In the end, waiting for her to return to the border of her own sect, and want to chop off the stone tablet with a sword. Hey, why can't the stone tablet be chopped in the slightest? It will be interesting at that time. Xinjiang Mountain is embarrassed and Luopao Mountain is also embarrassed. Anyway, as long as the poor road is not embarrassing, it is you who are embarrassed. Lu Qin raised his head and murmured, it's a big night, Yang He Chi Zhao. Sword of Coming Chapter 1179. Chapter 1179. The scholar is here. Qin Pingan asked curiously, are you really going to hold 2 night tours in a row? It's almost enough to hold one. Even Shimei River Water God Gao Brewery is not short of money. The last time I drank at the village school, I had to tell the truth after drinking. Today there is a night banquet and then take a day off. Tone, when everyone finally saves some money, there will be another game the day after tomorrow, no one's money will fall from the sky, I really can't stand it. Wei Bo glanced at him. Qin Pingan said with interest, when I didn't ask. Wei Bo said, I made an appointment with Meng Rong to go to the Changpu River for a drink. Qin Pingan nodded, I have to celebrate. Wei Bo looked at him again. Qin Pingan said helplessly, just tell me what you want me to do. Do you need me to go over there as a host, bring a few jars of good wine over there, or the assistant to help you play a few laps, block the wine for you, or you guys drinking flower wine? You can make it hard, just need me to show up at the end to help you secretly settle the bill? Wei Bo said, just do it if you have the heart. Meng Rong really wants to make an appointment with you for a drink. I would like to thank you for a few words. I helped to push it away. Qin Pingan hurriedly thanked him. Wei Bo went straight away. Qin Pingan sighed. Damn, with the same virtue as Lin Yupu, this is not about to become a god and he has a good temper. Why don't you go arrogant with Mr. Da? They were going to the Ministry of War office located in Kajia Lane, Chenbu Lang. Jiang Shangzhen originally wanted to support the old Shangshu, but he never thought that the old man would leave the palace city, and there would be no long Chanfubu. Chen Pinggan planned to give 500 military books to the Songshua lecture hall directly under the Ministry of War, which were ready-made copies anyway. Because they have been to the capital before, Chen Pinggan and Xiaomo have used their blindfolds. Jiang Shangzhen and Xiego, the chief 1 and 2 people at Luopao Mountain, are very casual. When they arrived at the heavily guarded Ministry of War office, the old Shangshu led them through the corridor. On the way they encountered many officials of the Ministry of War, but none of them took the initiative to say hello to the old Shangshu. Jiang Shangzhen sighed, Lao Shangshu is not the usual prestige in his own yamen. Just like myself, no one dared to greet me every time I went to Xinzhuan Peak to attend the discussion in the Zushirtang. Shinshin smiled and said, there is no official or not official authority, it's just that you don't like to bow your head and bow your waist. Not only our military department, but all the affairs of the government department in the capital, we strive for a quick solution. Well, except for Zhao Duanjin's Ministry of Rights, red tape and strict rules, I occasionally stop by there, and every few steps I have to nod to someone I don't know. My neck is sore, and I have to put on a dog skin plaster when I come back. Jiang Shangzhen automatically ignored the old man's yin and yang anger towards the yamen of the Ministry of Rights, and said with a smile, what's the point of being an official? The Ministry of Rights and the Hanlin Academy do pay attention to a lot. For example, when the sun shines on the 5th brick of the corridor, officials will get the yamen point. Lax, like Chao Gingxin, a servant of the Ministry of Personnel, he is a very special case in the Dali officialdom. This son of the Chao family of Shangzhou Kingdom, who was promoted from the Longquan Kiln superintendent, was often late for ordering, and his salary was not enough to be deducted. Shinshin said, it's still very beautiful outside the yamen. I just said that I went to Changpu River for a drink. Every time I check out I get a huge discount. I don't dare to go there often for fear of breaking down the restaurant. The room is very spacious, which is equivalent to opening up 3 rooms. In addition to reviewing official documents, the old minister can also hold small-scale discussions here. There is a row of bookshelves against the wall, and the other 2 sides of the cabinets on the top are all books and files. The eyes are full of books, and it is not too much to describe the vastness of a sentence. It was rare for the old Shangshu to entertain guests here, and none of them wore official robes. Soon there was an exclusive secretary who worked in the xianxia's office and brought tea. Sitting heavily on a heavily battered old taisher chair, habitually leaning on crutches in both hands, resting his chin on the back of his hands, he smiled and said, Qin Guosher, it's better to be early, I'll let the Ministry of Works be gentle and the Ministry of Household Mu Yendu. Come over here, let them get to know Qin Guosher and talk about business by the way. Although Shinshin is an important official of the same dynasty, but Shinshin is old and has been in various ministries, many of them are the mother's family yamen of the old Shangshu, plus Shinshin has many titles so that the 2 Shangshu came to the Ministry of War yamen, it doesn't matter, not to mention that Shinshin is still a teacher of Wenair who cares about the encounter over Xiang. Wenair calls Mr. Shinshin, and whether or not he agrees depends on whether Shinshin is in a good mood. Oh no, it was his ears at that time. Not agile, Dali officialdom, everyone knows that Xin Lao Shangsha's ears have been eloquent and ineffective since he was young. Qin Pinggan smiled and said, there is no need for this. Jiang Shangzhen used to watch the door in the imperial study, and was extremely bored, so he studied the details of the wearing of the various landscape deities in the house. The 2 ministers both wore court clothes and there were not many differences. For example, the boots on their feet were different. The heavy court boots were brand new but stained with dirt. Zhao Duanjin's boots are old but clean. Jiang Shangzhen was curious about how there was mud in the heavy boots. There is a time-honored shop specializing in the sale of chow boots in the capital of Dali. The people here in the capital, especially those who have lived near Ichi Alley and Cheer Street for generations, have developed a pair of sharp eyes. Xiaomo sat upright. Xiego leaned back on the chair lazily, pulled down his sable hat, covered his face and didn't know whether to sleep or rest. Shinshin asked, is Qin Guosher familiar with Beiju Luzhou Sanlang Temple? Chen Pinggan paused for a moment, thought for a moment, then shook his head and said, I have indeed been to Beiju Luzhou a few times, but north of Jidu, I have hardly set foot in it, so I am not familiar with Sanlang Temple. Jiang Shangzhen glanced at the mountain master. Qin Pinggan smiled and said, but I have a sword fairy friend, and he has a good relationship with Sanlang Temple. The old man nodded and said, the Ministry of Punishment intends to get some benefits for Dallas worship at all levels. Of course, it is not a bribe. The Ministry of Household has approved it, but rejected several proposals of the Ministry of Punishment, and they are suspected of being inappropriate. I didn't know that firewood and rice were expensive, and I spent money indiscriminately. Finally, I found a compromise method. According to the meaning of the Ministry of Household, one is the immortal brew of Changchun Palace. It was tougher than the money of the gods, and I was going to buy a batch of cheap and high-quality Sanlang Temple futons. As a result, the Ministry of War also heard about this and had an idea. Anyway, they spent money to buy them. There was a discount, so I thought of buying a futon for all the cultivators in the army, but this would increase the cost of the household department, and Mu Yen just didn't move a stool to the penal department to sit and scold in the street. Qin Pingan nodded. The futon in the Sanlang Temple is indeed a good thing. It is said that one small summer money can be used for two. When he first visited Beiju Luzhou that year, Qin Pingan was deeply impressed by this kind of futon on the mountain. On the Beach of Bones, because of the yin emanating from a ghost valley, there was a small market commonly known as Nehiguan there. It was noon when the sun was shining and it was still cool. On the border between the two worlds, big and small, Pima Zong built a long series of thatched dojos on top of those yin-rich and quintessential springs. Help Qi practitioners breathe, and absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth faster. Sanlang Temple is the largest weapon shop on Beiju Luzhou, and the genealogical monks of Sanlang Temple are generally famous for being proficient in casting weapons. That is, they do not like to fight, but they are very good at fighting. There is a well-known mantra in Sanlang Temple: don't bully honest people. The body-protecting spirit armor cast by Sanlang Temple, the Sword Immortal's flying sword imitated by Henjian Mountain, the three-color cassock of Fuguang Temple, and the crane cloak feather coat of Yunshao Palace of Chongxin Department of the Yuan Dynasty can all be regarded as famous all over the world. Haran Jojo, in refining and forging weapons, apart from the divine continent of the Middle Earth, there is only Liuxia continent, which is rich in products, which can be compared with Luzhou and Beiju. Just like Han Huizi, the old sect master of Taihui sword sect, there is a famous swordsmanship, which is called De Gong Jade Cutting. It is really impossible. There are many swordsmen in this continent, and ordinary Qi practitioners should not wear more robes and treasure armor when going out. Being able to carry a few more swords means more lives. At the same time, pure warriors also want to have a few weapons that can be used in hand, so that they can easily practice their hands with Qi practitioners, and practice martial arts and boxing. If you buy a robe and a treasure armor, I will choose a few magic weapons for attacking and attacking. If you buy magic weapons for attacking and attacking, I will start with more defensive treasures and various amulets, and at the same time, I will also secretly make some weapons that are not low in killing power. In the end, it led to the ups and downs of the mountains in Beiju Luzhou. The atmosphere was particularly simple, and the character was particularly straightforward. There was no hospitality, and it was embarrassing to say hello to people when going out. Qin Pingan once gave Lu Jinglong 100 pieces of Guyu money to help buy as many imitation swords of Henjian Mountain and Sanlang Temple treasure armor as possible. If there is any surplus, help Pom Pom and buy some idle treasures. In short, don't save me money. The implication is that we, Qin Shanzhu, want both quality and quantity. After all, Lu Jiangxian's face is very valuable. In the end, Lu Jinglong really went to the Sanlang Temple in person and helped to buy an imitation sword of Henjian Mountain and 2 pairs of treasure armor. There are signatures of 2 famous refiners. Generally speaking, the names on Lingbeigia are all the handwritings enshrined by the Patriarch Hall of Sanlang Temple. Later, Qin Pingan gave to Lu Beixiang's 2 direct disciples, sister and brother Yuanbao Yuanlai, who happened to have a pair of treasure armor. How can a pure martial artist not be able to wear a treasure armor? The rivers and lakes are sinister, the heart of guarding against others is indispensable, and there must be something to protect oneself. Later, I heard Bai Shou say that the surnamed Lu met another confidant at the Sanlang Temple, so the price is so easy to talk about. In terms of seniority, the female cultivator who nominally manages half of the weapons shops in Sanlang Temple is Yuan Xian's aunt. She, Lu Sui, the fairy of Xuanhuan, and Sun Qing, the head of Kaik Mansion, are all on the list of Beiju Luzhou. The beauties of the top 10 fairies, when Lu Jinglong was still the master of Lianran Peak, they belonged to Lu Jinglong. Anyway, in Beiju Luzhou everyone knows it. Thanks to the night tour feasts, the treasures in the treasure banknote office of Piyun Mountain and the storeroom of the Guard of Honor Division are piled up into mountains, and there are a large pile of catalogs that record them. Moreover, Qin Pingan heard Xiamen said that the two yamen of Wei Shanjin's family occupy a large area and have been expanded more than once. Among the countless gifts, there was a futon made in secret from the Sanlang Temple. Later, Xiaomo and Shanjunfu spent money to buy a futon and brought it back to Luopao Mountain. The conclusion is that it is not difficult to imitate, but the cost cannot be reduced. First, it is limited by several key materials, and there is no substitute for Aquarius Island. Besides, whether it can be mass-produced, the cost gap is very large. Since even Xiao Mo said that, it means that the futon of Sanlang Temple is almost an extreme. In addition, Beiju Luzhou has 4 hilltops, all of which have business connections at the bottom of the box. For example, the robes of Laojun Lane were once sold to 6 continents other than Aquarius and Tonggishao. At that time, Beipingzu was too poor and Tonggishao was too closed. However, the robes of Laojun Lane have been monopolized by Kaiyang Linzong for a long time. It is rumored that the founder of Laojun Lane, Song Yun, whose Taoist name is similar, is extremely talented in refining things, but he is not good at business. When I was young, I had a high vision. Regardless of the cost, I only wanted to create the best robes on the mountain. As a result, I was hungry and cold. Later, Qiong Linzong came to the door and talked with her about cooperation. Planting the robes of Qinghe let Qiong Linzong earn a lot of money. And she has finally refined the famous robe that can be remembered in history called Ingran robe, which is extremely expensive, and is the first choice for chi practitioners in the upper 5 realms other than Beiju Luzhou sword cultivator, but it's a pity Laojun Lane can only make 1 piece every jiazi. Somewhat similar to the Yuhua Dan of Tonggishao Qinghu Palace, it is not sold for immortal money but a great favor. As for the cooperation between Song Yun and Qiong Linzong, whether she met a noble person in her life or an unkind person, on the Beiju Luzhou side, each has a different side. Later, Laojun Lane launched several treasure pots, one after another, such as the armor parade tailor-made for the emperors, monarchs and nobles of one continent. The seal is cumbersome and the treasures are gorgeous and extremely precious. The Jade Pure Realm and the Earth Immortal cultivators as well as the lower 5 realm Chi cultivators, were all beaten by Laojun Lane in one go, plus the royal families of various countries, lining up to take advantage of them. Grab these 3 kinds of customers at the same time, Liao Zhengxiang and Kaiyang Linzong, of course the money is coming. The old man suddenly patted the handle of the chair. I almost forgot the old sect master Jiang, who is actually the one who is most familiar with Beiju Luzhou. Xiego pulled up his sable hat and glanced at Chief Zhou. She got Baize's permission and ran here to look for Xiao Mo. Xiego showed up at Beiju Luzhou at the beginning, so about Chief Zhou's presence there the word-of-mouth deeds on the side are relatively clear. It's been so many years and every time Jiang Shangzhen is mentioned the Qi practitioners over there are still gnashing their teeth and everyone will kill them. Jiang Shangzhen was still thick-skinned and said with a smile, "When you buy something from Beiju Luzhou you can just report my name, but there is a half or 15% discount so I can't make any guarantees." It is estimated that as soon as they heard that Jiang Shangzhen was involved in the business, 9 out of 10 sects, they would say to the Dali court that as long as the 3rd leg of Jiang thief was broken, they would not receive any money and give it away for nothing. Just like the Sanlang Temple, Jiang Shangzhen is really familiar with him. As long as he is familiar there, he will treat Jiang Shangzhen, who almost became his son-in-law, well. Using a pseudonym or something was originally nothing. The problem was that Jiang Shangzhen hooked up with 2 female cultivators of the Yuan family at the same time. As for the Laojun Alley, Jiang Shangzhen will of course not fall. He has been there a few times, and there is no reason for Jiang Shangzhen to make more trips just because there is a female nun Song Yun there. However, there is no story between the 2 sides. Song Yun has a cold personality and a secluded personality. She is a woman who is obsessed with refining things. Looking at Jiang Shangzhen is no different from looking at a dead person. But Jiang Shangzhen looked at her and felt, amazing. Some women can kill people just relying on their backs. Jiang Shangzhen has only seen 3 women with such a style in his life. Besides Song Yun, there is another one who is now on Luopao Mountain. But Jiang Shang really didn't dare to have any crooked thoughts. It's one thing that the rabbit doesn't eat the grass on the edge of the nest, not to mention that the other party is the law of his own Luopa Mountain. The old man asked abruptly, "It is said that Hate Sword Mountain possesses 6 treasures of the town gate, which are the 6 imitation swords of the sword immortal who are known as the first-class authentic works. Among them only 4 are known by the outside world. They are Sitting Dead, Poem Ghost, Shrine, Sumi Mountain. Does Sect Master Jiang know what the other 2 imitation swords are called?" Jiang Shangzhen is really clear and he is very familiar with the secrets of Izhou's anecdote and said, It's Tongyu and Hero's tomb. Jiang Shangzhen asked curiously, what is the old Shangshu asking about this? You have friends on the mountain and you are in a hurry? But these imitation swords, generally speaking, money alone can't buy them. Hate Jianshan's business has always had little interaction with the court at the foot of Beiju Luzhou Mountain, mainly because the threshold is too high. In Jiang Shangzhen's words, it is only killing fat pigs and pitting rich people. For example, Jiang Shangzhen himself. Back then it was almost just a little bit that I bought the treasure of Jinshan, which is also called Gentle Township, with a girl who met and fell in love with each other. Later, it was Jiang Shangzhen's rare conscience discovery that he changed his mind temporarily. Otherwise, he would have put the imitation sword of Hero's tomb in his pocket. This imitation sword can warm and nourish tens of thousands of ghost generals and Yin soldiers. Out of this thing, the most suitable for group fights. Shen Qin smiled and said, many years ago, Cui Guosher wanted to build a government-run kendo sect in our Dali territory. I happened to be one of the officials who handled this matter, but unfortunately it didn't happen. In fact, according to Cui Ye's earliest idea, Ruan Qiong is indeed the best sect master of the kendo sect. First, Ruan Qiong is the first swordsmith in Aquarius Island, and the Longji Mountain in the mountains to the west, then a large piece of dragon-slaying cliff can be used as the foundation of the kendo sect. As for the sword cultivator embryos needed to open branches and loose leaves, those Dali sticks that are scattered all year round in the mountains and rivers of one continent are worshipped. They are not dry rice. In addition, the earthly branch monks of Dali, Yuanhuajing and Song Su were all born in swordsmanship, so the prototype and framework of the entire sect were built early. Henjian Mountain in Beiju Luzhou will be the ally of this sword sect. Listening to the tone, the national teacher Cui Yu is going to personally facilitate this. Fenglei Garden will not move, but Jinyang Mountain will definitely become the downhill of this brand new sect. In addition, in the territory of the old Zhuang dynasty, there will be a genealogy cultivator who is the second descendant of Jianxiu. One sect and two descended the mountain, forming a chasing situation, secretly created 3 sword formations, and finally used the imitation of Baiyujing as the center of the formation, and joined forces with the Qi of the Qingtian supervisor in the capital, specifically for Ascension monks. As for Ruan Qiong as the chief worshipper of Dali later, Longquan Jianzong was established on the former site of Lizhu Dongtian, which is far from the Kendo sect in Cui Ye's mind. The old Shangshu glanced at the new national teacher Dali. If you talk about your own business, start from scratch. Chen Pingan, who started in a humble alley, is of course outstanding enough, but compared with Cui Yu, it seems to be a little less meaningful. Just thinking about this, the old man immediately felt that it was unreasonable. Chen Pingan asked, where is the Mo family? Shen Qin said, we started to evacuate Dali one after another a few years ago. The Mo family does things very kindly. They not only helped Dali cultivate a large number of craftsmen on the mountain, but also left a lot of drawings at the Ministry of Engineering. Chen Pingan smiled, and it seemed that His Majesty the Emperor had said something ingenious and unfeeling. Shen Qin said, it's a pity that the robe of Kaik Mansion was not selected for the customized list of the Confucian Temple. Chen Pingan nodded and said, regret is naturally regret, but it's not too unexpected. The last time we discussed the Confucian Temple in China, we ordered 7 kinds of products from all the continents just for the Xinjia ferry. Among them are the mountain ferry and the sword boat jointly built by the Dali Song family and the Imo family. Beiju Luzhou has nearly 20 kinds of mountain refining objects selected. Among them, the only robes are the soft and silky Lingbao armor of Sanlang Temple and the Qinghe robe of Laojun Lane, distributed to the monks of the lower 5 realms. In fact, the robes woven by Kaik Mansion, after obtaining a secret refining technique of Jingqueching robes, have improved their rank by a big step, and Kaik Mansion is even willing to build 2,000 pieces for the Confucian Temple without making any money. In addition, during the discussion in the Confucian Temple, De Li Song Changjing personally recommended the robe of Kaik Fu, but it was still only listed as a candidate list by the Confucian Temple at that time. The explanation given by the Confucian Temple for the rejection is that the cost of the robes of Kaik Fu is too high and the output is too small. Just because Kaik Mansion is a small sect, there are only so many female cultivators of genealogy known as textile mother, and it is indeed impossible to truly meet the mass production qualification required by the Confucian Temple. After getting this statement, the entire female cultivator of Kaik Mansion was very disappointed. But in Qin Pingan's view, this is not a kind of care for Kaik Mansion by the Confucian Temple. Otherwise, once selected, the Confucian Temple will order at least 2,000 robes, and the female cultivator of Kaik House will not have to practice for a few decades, and can only be busy weaving robes day and night. Of course, it was a long-term plan to follow the plan of Qin Pingan and the head of Kai Kei's house, Wu. With a kind of very hard and unprofitable, for this Kaik House exchanged a Millennium Foundation. Xianxia asked again, I heard that Qin Guosher and Jianxiu Lu Su are friends? Qin Pingan nodded, I have a personal friendship. The Luoma Heliu clan is one of the few wealthy landowners in Beiju Luzhou. For generations they have been in the business of running boats to catch the sea and running over mountains, which is equivalent to the largest mountain in Beiju Luzhou. The money may not be as much as Kayonglinzong's, but if you want to talk about the reputation on the mountain, Kayonglinzong is not worthy to carry shoes for the mule, horse and river Lu clan. The present-day head of the Lu clan is close friends with the ancestor of the Yuan clan in Sanlang Temple. The Luomahelia family has an honest family style, and the family has a very deep background, but they have never asked the Confucian Temple for a sect title. But the last time the Confucian Temple and the dynasties and immortals of various continents levied cross-continental ferry boats, the Lu Mahelu clan took out 2 boats in one go. One belonged to the expropriation and must be given, and the second boat was given by the Lu clan on his own initiative. There are 2 things about this family that are worth saying. Once, Zhu Luzhou Jianxiu traveled together, contracted, across continents, and grabbed a north word from Aizhou. Because there are many sword cultivators who are not high enough, the sea is boundless, and it is extremely exhausting to cross the sea with the sword. All the ferry boats on the mountain at that time were taken out by the Lu family, which covered all the expenses of the excursion. The real fire dragon lying on the ground peak, the surnamed Xianxia of the Tianshifu of Longhu Mountain, is not a sword cultivator, but he is the leader of the sword cultivator of one continent. Zhang took the wine table and pulled the Lu family's head to talk and laugh. One called poor and the other said that I didn't have much money. On that trip across continents, once you asked Jianizhou and hit a wall on Azu, all the ferries of Luomahi Liu's family would be destroyed, and it is estimated that none of them would ever return to Jiluzu. So later on, the entire Beiju Luzhou, especially Jianxiu, had to accept the affection, and they were all willing to accept the affection. The second thing is that now the world knows that the wealthy but scumbag Lumahi Lu clan has finally produced a talented and romantic talent. Of course, this person was the young master Lu Su who had only been in the Great Wall of Sword Chi for more than 20 years. It turns out that we are north of Luzhou, on the side of the Jianxi Great Wall. In addition to the sword light, which is the best in Jiuzhou, it turns out that there is such a book business. After Lu Su returned to his hometown, he went to Taihui Jianzong and had 2 drinks with Lu Jinglong, but unfortunately he was not very happy. The old man opened the skylight and said brightly, the reason why I talked to Qin Guosher about this is because Lu Su, the young master of Luoma River, and Yuan Xian of Sanlang Temple are now wandering around the capital of Dali. Yuan Xian of Sanlang Temple, after all, is still too young, and it is unlikely that he will be the current head of the family. He was cultivated by the next head of the family. However, according to the espionage, Lu Su was already the head of the Lu family in Luomahi, but he did not care about things for the time being, saying that he would have to wait until he entered the Jade Realm. Qin Pingan nodded and said, I will go to them after I leave the Yamen to catch up with the past and make a little bit of the friendship of the landlords. In addition to the sword cultivator who met at the Jianxi Great Wall and had a private friendship with Qin Pingan, in fact Qin Pingan was in Beiju Luzhou, and he did have many friends. He only said that the last time Luopao Mountain held a Zongmen celebration, as a gift, spiritual Duke Yuan Shenlin gave away a large piece of palace pavilion that used to belong to the Nanshuan Water Hall. Li Yuan, Marquis of Longting of Dadu, presented a green river with rich water transport. Also, Shenfeng Yuan Lingyan, Lu Jiqing etc., their names were not on the booklet that Qin Pingan had previously published. The old man suddenly asked, Chen Wenqian first jumped from a Hebo to the Qiping Lake Lord of Laoyu Lake, and then directly became Qiantang. Sir, can you pass through the Confucian Temple? Qin Pingan smiled and said, mostly it will be approved. If it is rejected, the court will simply select an orthodox water from Zhujiang Wuyun and the Suha water god recommended by the Ministry of Rites to fill the gap. It is not a hassle. Xiaomo knew the reason. My son still said it implicitly, Sun Wenqian didn't mostly pass, but he definitely could. In the final stage of the young master's wandering of the 6 classics, the gods crossed the sea and the mountains. Xiaomo once stood at the highest point of the town demon tower with the most holy teacher and Chunyang Lu Yen. At that time, the most holy teacher he personally said a word, and the Confucian Temple will record all those names in the book. In this list, There are not only the great mountain gods like Suishanzhouyu in the Middle Earth, but also the small mountain gods like Douyin of Dayunling, Gong Xinzhou of Xiangtaraya Mountain, and Wei Wei of the Watershed. Of course there is also Xuanhuan of Laoyuhu. Xin stood up and said with a smile, "There are guests, rare guests, it seems that they are looking for Qin Guosher. I will ask someone to help arrange a room, close the door, can you drink as you please?" Qin Pingan got up, "Don't be so troublesome, I met a few of them and chatted while walking. The old xianxia doesn't have to see off guests." The old man smiled and said, "To see a guest you must send a guest. Even if you are not a colleague in the officialdom, there is still a friendship with the hometown." Qin Pingan smiled. Xiego put on his mink hat again. "This old man is quite funny." The old man said it was to see off guests, but in fact it was to the door. Jiang Shangzhen walked at the end and chatted a few more words with the old man. The people who came to the Ministry of War to look for Qin Pingan were all members of the earthly branch of the Great Li, 12 of them, and they were free to enter and leave the government offices in the capital without saying hello. For came today and for some reason they were all women. The girl Yu Yu, the formation master Han Zhoujin, the female ghost of Bamike on the mountain, and the recently joined Zhou Haijing, she is the only pure martial artist, not talking about appearance, only decoration. This female master is still so jeweled, dazzling. The only worthless item on Zhou Haijing's body was probably the flower letter period silk sachet embroidered with swallow patterns hanging from his waist. Yu was a little aggrieved. She was the one who didn't want to come here the most, but Aunt Feng asked her to come by name to bully others. "It's Aunt Feng who asked us to come to Mr. Chen's side to order a mao." She smiled and said, "Aunt Feng wants to ask Mr. Chen when to go to 100 Flowers Blessed Land." Qin Pingan said, "What is really anxious, shouldn't it be 100 Flowers Blessed Land? What is Aunt Feng anxious about?" Yu said, "I'm just talking. I don't know what Aunt Feng thinks." Qin Pingan nodded, "Understood, I'll talk to Aunt Feng about this later." Han Zhoujin clenched his fists in thanks. "Last time Sect Master Lu passed by the capital and gave me a lot of advice. Thank you again, Mr. Qin." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "You're welcome, we Lu Jianxian have always liked to help others and are very unpretentious." Han Zhoujin hesitated to speak, but gave up after thinking about it. Sect Master Lu is really approachable and has a very charismatic personality. It is a sword fairy, but when it comes to the formation method, he is concise, and his words are righteous, which has benefited Han Zhoujin a lot. But Sect Master Liu's drinking capacity seems to be average, and his face turns red when he drinks, and he is not as addicted to alcohol as the outside world is rumored to be. Zhou Haijing clasped his fists and shook it vigorously, with a bright smile on his face and said, "I heard that Mr. Chen will take care of us from now on. The little girl is very grateful for taking care of us." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It's easy to say." Xiego squinted at this young female warrior, who is not very pleasing to the eye. Just like that Guanyi, he swayed his chest several times when he walked, so you shouldn't think it's too cumbersome. Gai Yin is obviously the most sincere thanks to this Mr. Chen who taught him a business experience. When doing business he is indeed the most reliable Mr. Chen. "I have to ask for advice today." But she also said two fresh news first. As Zhou Haijing said, Qin Pingan, who became a national teacher, will be the immediate boss of their 12 earthly branches, the only one. The Dali court just learned that the first person in the northern land of Beiju Luzhou, Jianxiu Baishang, has passed the customs and successfully broke through. On the other side of Xinjiang Mountain, the sect master Zhu Huang went to the full moon peak, and Xia Yuansui, his uncle, quickly convened a discussion in the ancestral hall that did not allow others to speak. "I believe that the latest issue of Shanshui newspapers from Daxian Mansion in Aquarius will sell well." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "It has nothing to do with me. As for Baishang, the fight was over long ago, and the news on the mountain was relatively lagging behind." Zhou Haijing and the others looked at each other playfully. "Is there no silver 300 taels here?" As the Shanshui Di Bao of Fengshua Temple said, "Xinjiang Mountain and Luopao Mountain have a good relationship, or else Qin Shanju will come to the door to pay homage and congratulations." Next, Qin Pingan asked them about the cultivation status of the rest of the earthly branch monks. Naturally, he would answer any questions he had. There may be only a few cultivators on the Aquarius Mountain, Yu, and they are most afraid of this seemingly genial young hidden officer, and even the sword cultivator of Xinjiang Mountain can't compare with them. In the end, Gai Yin hurriedly found an opportunity to chat with Mr. Qin about personal matters, and asked how to make the business of the inn better and better. Qin Pingan didn't know whether to laugh or cry, but he just said something out of conscience. It was already very good, and there was no suggestion. The reputation of her inn is now on the verge of ruining the streets on Dali Mountain, and making money is notoriously dark. But I have to admit that the female cultivators are almost reluctant to stay at that inn, and all the male chi practitioners have become repeat customers. After all, they are eye-catching. Seeing the sincere expression on Gayan's face, it is estimated that if she doesn't speak bluntly, she will propose that the partnership earns money and then divides the accounts. Qin Pingan had to say, "Gayan, I just asked you to pay attention to the appearance so as not to when the guests came to the door, they followed a haunted house. I didn't let you go to extremes like this. What do you think? Arranging so many Yingyan Jianyan at the door in one breath, do you feel that it is too heavy?" Chen Jian looked sad and suddenly lost the enthusiasm to make money. Qin Pingan wrapped his arms around his sleeves, walked side by side with Gai Yen in the corridor and continued, "Of course I know that the young women at the entrance of the inn are all uprooted people who have lost their pedigree status. It will give each of them a generous salary, and they are all willing to solicit customers there. Well, except for most of the women who have the idea of repaying your gratitude to you. To put it nasty, there may be some people who want to catch the golden turtle son-in-law on the mountain is actually nothing. In short, it is human nature." Chang Jian looks a little better. Qin Pingan smiled and said, "He'll just give a few small suggestions. There are only 2 female nuns left at the door to entertain guests, and the rest are diverted to private houses, one at a time, and they are responsible for checking in with the guests. 4 singles face-to-face. As long as it is an immortal master who has entered the inn, they can help, lead the way or accompany you in matters such as tours and visitors in the capital, free of charge. So you have to let them know more about the scenery, sights and specialties of the capital, so that you know it by heart and you are familiar with it. Then negotiate with some big restaurants in advance, and the guests who come from your inn, all expenses there, the inn must take a cut, such as the restaurant in Changpu River. It will be very happy for you. Pull the guests over. As for the money, the inn will go back and split the bill with them. It is best to pay it monthly. On any day the dividend will be higher than the monthly salary. They will naturally be more concerned, and they can also take advantage of these. It is a precious opportunity to become more and more familiar with the sects on the mountain and the cultivators of various genealogy, so that they can take the opportunity to manage their own contacts. In every house you use snacks which must have their own characteristics, such as clearing offerings in the study, calligraphy and painting antiques, utensils that can be viewed in the mirror, and so on. The more the better. Put some in each room. Of course, don't be too tacky and cumbersome, otherwise it will be too much and it will be counterproductive. Also, put a booklet on the table which is very helpful to each room in the room. Such things are clearly marked with prices, and guests can spend money to buy things as long as they see the items they like. In the future, when there are many repeat customers, the hotel will record the personal preferences of any guest in detail every time, and then they can watch the dishes. The next time you enter the door, lead them directly to a private house with their own style. Those big customers who don't take money as money, the more you are willing to give discounts, they will be embarrassed by it. Then, recommending guests to save money in the inn's account room, whether the guests themselves or their friends on the mountain, stay in the inn and sign up with you. And you spend some money, find a few sects that have Shanshui Dibao, and write a few good articles for you. At the nearby ferry ports and some mountain ferry boats, let people contact them. The inn in particular, it is necessary to have a good relationship with the Changchun Palace, so that in the most expensive houses, there must be a jar of Changchun fairy wine on the table. Then, pay attention to attracting female cultivators to the door so as not to ruin the reputation of the mountain and make money to make money. If you can't make money from women, how can you make big money? Then the inn must have its own mirror. You can take the initiative to talk to the Yamen of the Ministry of Punishment and say that you can talk about cooperation, and the reward is to borrow some beautiful scenery for the inn for free. The snail shell dojo, you don't need to say anything, they will naturally understand. With the help of the inn to collect espionage on the mountain, the punishment department is all experts. They will grasp the balance so as not to smash the inn signboard. In this way, food, accommodation and transportation, the inn has its own characteristics. Chen Jian eyes bright. Wow, Mr. Chen's casual is really not casual. Sure enough, the experts know if they have it as soon as they make a move. Xiego said in his heart, Xiaomo, our mountain master is very good at business. Xiaomo smiled and said, you just know. Xiego wondered, is it natural? Xiaomo said, of course not. You have to travel thousands of miles, read thousands of books and meet hundreds of people. Qin Pingan raised his chin and continued to say in his heart, actually, there is no real expert in business, there is not one in front of you. Why do you want to be far away? Gai Yen glanced at Zhou Haijing who was walking in front and said angrily, "It's not the right way to go with her. This speaks the most nasty and annoying." Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Isn't it the right way to go with her or the way to go with money? As long as she becomes a business partner and enables her to earn money every day, do you think she will quarrel with you and say weird things?" Gai Yen said tentatively, "Then let me try it?" Qin Pingan nodded and said, "You must try it." Brighten up. Qin Pingan said, "Gaian, let me remind you at last that earning money is a good thing, but don't forget your main business and practice well." Gai Yen nodded vigorously and she said cautiously, "Mr. Qin, don't you really need to share the profits of the inn? I feel bad for my conscience." Qin Pingan said angrily, "Cultivation well and strive to break through as soon as possible, it is better than anything else." Out of the gate of the Ministry of Military Affairs, across the street is Honglu Temple. Yu and the others all said goodbye and left. The sun was a bit dazzling. Jiang Shangzhen stretched out his hand to cover his eyebrows and asked with a smile, "Miss Xia, I heard that Fei Fei is your second disciple?" Xiego grinned and said, "That little girl, she's not even a swordsman, I don't recognize her as a disciple, not to mention she doesn't recognize me as a master, and neither side recognizes it, so it doesn't count. We all pretended not to know each other when we met on the other side of the Hailuo River. Let me guess, it was that mother-in-law Yangji who talked with the plane tree in Tongisao? Oh, each and every one of them is indebted." Jiang Shangzhen turned to look at Xiaomo. Xiaomo is puzzled, "What does it have to do with me?" Xiego rubbed his sable hat and asked, "Mountain Master, can I go and catch up with that Ant Feng?" Qin Pingan smiled and said, "Whatever. Just help me with a message to Ant Feng, that trip to the blessed land of 100 flowers will be over as soon as possible. When you go back and forth, remember not to make any noise. After all, this is the first place of good for the country. It is not advisable to sway the market." Xiego laughed and said, "The mountain owner has been worrying too much, and I have never been bad for this person." Xiaomo said, "I won't go with her. I don't know her well. I have nothing to chat with her." Xiego disappeared in a flash, silently. But on Qin Pingan's side there is also a girl with a mink hat. Xiego came to the flower shed near the fire temple in an instant, and saw a beautiful woman with all kinds of style, sitting under the grape trellis of the old vines reading a book. When reading, the words are all green. The breeze is breezy, and the scenery is infinite. Xiego looked around and said in an extremely mellow and authentic small-town dialect, "Hey, okay, you can choose a place to be quiet in the midst of the noise." Ant Feng closed the book, raised her head to look at the girl's face by Jing and said softly, "Long time no see." Xiego wiped his nose with his thumb, "Don't hide it, I can smell the aroma of the wine, so I came here." Ant Feng was indifferent. "Whether there is wine or not, what does it have to do with you, Bai Jing? It's not that she hasn't seen Ascension Realm Sword Cultivator, in fact she has gone to many more." Xiego smiled suddenly, clasped his fists in front of him, shook it and said flatteringly, "Ant Feng, give me some wine to drink, I'm very thirsty." Ant Feng was caught off guard and the white scene in front of her was too white. Could it be that, like Xiaomo, he used some kind of ancient supernatural power to strip out part of his xinxing? Xiego sat down beside the stone table, with one hand on the table, his fingers tapped on the table in turn, waiting for Ant Feng to bring out a good wine to serve the guests. Ant Feng got up and came to the table and asked, "What did Qin Pingan say?" Xiego grinned, posing as if he was listening. "What?" She raised one arm and touched her sleeve with the other. A pocket sword box hidden in the sleeve. Inside the box is an ancient sword named Qingcang. In ancient times, this short sword was also known as Qingchang, which could make the Taoists in the world regret the green intestines when they saw the sword's light. The sword is the same as the dragon and the box is just a line. It is rumored that Bai Jing has another small sword, which he keeps in his arms and keeps it secret. Ant Feng smiled and said, "Scare me?" Xiego shook his sleeves and laughed, "I don't dare, I can't kill you anyway." Ant Feng sighed softly. For 1,000 years, see the old man again. As for friend or foe, it doesn't seem to matter. Xiego leaned forward, lay on the table and spread his hands. "When I woke up this time, it seems that everyone is unfamiliar except for Xiaomo." Ant Feng smiled and said, "Have you slept with him?" Xiadog just laughed. In the northern border of Dali, a towering mountain, formerly known as Baiyue, Gukan only took the maid with the Taoist named Chunxiao by her side, and her aunt Han Xiaosa had already returned to the White Emperor city in the Middle Earth. In a pavilion on the side of an official road, Lu Xianying stood side by side with a young woman in a padded coat with a round face, waiting for Guk, and Lu Xianying looked at Gukan and the woman. He didn't say anything, just tut tsk over there. The little slug is fine. Sure enough, men turn bad when they have money. Now they know how to bring a beautiful woman when they go out. Will they warm the bed? You must know that according to the customs of their hometown, the younger brother can only marry after the elder brother has completed the marriage. Gukan didn't bother to say anything to Lu Xianying. She just looked at the bright moon from the wild, clasped her fists and smiled. Gukan in Mud Bottle Lane, I have seen my future sister-in-law. Credit, you said with a smile. I am now a pseudonym Yu Qianyue, of course you can call me Taoist Credit Moon in private. The first impression of Gukan is good, much stronger than someone else. The maid gave 1,000 blessings. The slave is effective, I have seen Lu Jianxian and Sister Liue. Of course she knew the credit month, but the credit month didn't know the junior in her hometown. Lu Xianying smiled and glanced at the woman who claimed to be efficacious. As for her feat, realm and background, it didn't matter. She clasped her fists in return and smiled politely. I've seen fellow Taoist efficacious. Efficacy does not yet know the severity of the benefits. Instead, she just felt that Lu Xianying would be easier to get along with than that young hidden official. The young sect master of Longquan Sword sect in front of him is definitely not a simple Jade Pure Realm Sword cultivator. A glance is enough. Gukan didn't talk nonsense. She took out a wooden box from her bosom, threw it to Lu Xianying and said in her heart, "What you told me has been done." Lu Xianying smiled as usual but just took the wooden box in his hand, put it in his sleeve at will, strode a meteor, stretched out his hand to wrap his arms around Gukan's neck, and asked with a soft smile, "Is it easy?" Gukan said angrily, "Don't worry about it." After entering Baidi City to cultivate, Gukan never asked that master. This thing is the only exception. No way. Lu Xianying threatened him that if he didn't do this he wouldn't even think about being the best man for him. Lu Xianying lowered his voice and asked, "Aren't you afraid that Qin Pingan will find out and turn his face with you?" Gukan said indifferently, "What the consequences will be, I will only know better than you." After hearing this answer, Lu Xianying nodded and patted Gukan on the head. "Yes, I didn't make a friend like you in vain." Gukan pushed Lu Xianying's hand away and reminded in her heart, "It's just a portrait after all, and the effect may not be very good." Lu Xianying snorted, then turned to Gukan and said, "I only know better than you about this kind of thing." Gukan said in a heartfelt voice, "As a reward, Master asked me to ask you one thing. Have you ever met the of the changer who sits in the long river of time?" Lu Xianying looked dignified, shook his head and said, "It's not appropriate to talk about this here. When we arrive at Yui Peak, forget it, we'll go to Xianxia Mountain to talk about it." Gukan said, "Now that you have the answer, you don't need to bother so much. Master only needs to know that existence and whether it still exists. I'm only responsible for helping Master determine whether it exists or not. As for the rest, if Master wants to know more inside information he will naturally come to you." Lu Xianying stretched out his palm and rubbed his chin. "Does the city lord buy drink? Do you have a fairy brew that you are particularly fond of? If there is, you can help me make a few jars." Gukan scolded her in her hometown dialect. According to the way the three of them got along, she actually agreed. Lu Xianying held the back of his head with both hands, and Gukan beside him was more like a scholar. It is also the credit month and the efficacies of the fellow villagers, and they walk behind their respective Taoist companions and masters. Lu Xianying said lazily, "If I had been there, I would have never needed Chao Ci to deliver that punch, then those locust leaves of yours would be useless." Gukan said, "You are the best at talking big and bragging." Apparently, Qin Pingan had already informed Lu Xianying of the wild fight where they met on a narrow road. Probably because he was worried that Lu Xianying would not invite him to be the best man? Lu Xianying thief smiled and said, "Where are you and this sister?" Gukan sneered, "It's the same as you and Xianxia." Lu Xianying felt a little shriveled. When it comes to quarreling, Gukan is very talented. Back then he and Qin Pingan together were not as good as a slug. Of course it was no different with Qin Pingan, who was a boring gourd at that time. Gukan hesitated for a moment, then said, "Let me tell you a little bit of my own guesses. The credit moon by your side, her chance of becoming enlightened in the future, may be related to the immortal tomb in our hometown, and the Xiangyuan of Lingfei Palace with the Taoist name of Dongting, as well as the Qiyun Mountain formerly known as Baiyu in front of you. It has something to do with it. As for how to connect them together, how to extend more clues, you want to go." Lu Xianying nodded and said, "Mr. Qi's placing Miss Yu in our hometown must have a profound meaning. I remember that there was a time at the blacksmith shop where we were eating old duck bamboo shoots together. Miss Yu mentioned one thing. Xuanhuan once said something to her that looked like a poem of wandering immortals and a function of step. In the end, when Lu Xianying asked her what it was, Miss Yu said that it was about ascending to the sky, making up for the lack of money, moonlight and white clouds, etc. I don't remember clearly. All of a sudden Lu Xianying, who thought he was generous enough, was completely stunned. Later, Lu Xianying went to ask Qin Pingan about the matter, and helped to ask for the whole content. Lu Xianying suddenly slapped him and taught him a lesson from his heart. What kind of credit month, no big or small, call me sister-in-law. Gukan just lowered her head and avoided Lu Xianying's attack. She turned her head and smiled and said, "Sister-in-law, would you like me to talk to you about some old things about Mud Bottle Alley? It's actually quite interesting." Lu Xianying laughed, hurriedly stretched out his hand to restrain Gukan's neck, lowered his voice and said, "The slugs. They are all my own brothers, so what if I call you Big Brother Gu?" She said with a smile, "Isn't it Wang Zhu?" I know, Lu Xianying used to go to Mud Bottle Alley to see her. Gukan turned her head and smiled, "So my sister-in-law knows, so there's nothing to talk about." Lu Xianying let go of Gukan, sniffed at himself, wiped his face fiercely, and stared blankly ahead. What is the use of me wanting this sword fairy realm and sect master status? Without waiting for Gukan to gloat over the misfortune, Lu Xianying first stretched out his hand to go around it, and then he let out a sullen fart, and then reached out and slapped his face in a lightning-fast manner. When Gukan scolded a hometown dialect and was about to fight back, Lu Xianying had already left with Yu Jian. Gukan thought about it but still didn't chase after him. As a child it was always like this. "Slug, stop crying, come and wipe your face with your sleeve." There was a fart sound, and then another snap, and the clenched fist spread out into the palm of the hand, covering the face of the little slug. After all, I was young at that time and suffered many losses. The child was always crying heartbroken, so someone comforted him, saying that he was fine, and he would definitely help him teach Lu Xianying, who had run away laughing, a lesson. But every time he went up and down the mountain, all the harvest that person and Lu Xianying would let the child with two snots take home. Lu Xianying has never been a stingy person. Otherwise, why did the slugs of the past talk so easily to Song Pangchai, who was also in the Mud Bottle Alley? In the capital of Dali, after Qin Pingan left the military office in Kajia Lane, Xinshin still called to Lord Xiangshu. While waiting for people in the house, Xinshin stood over the desk, stretched out his hand and rubbed an ancient ink stone. It is said that it was the first official document of the Ministry of War of Dali. The old man died in the office. At that time, there was still an unfinished official document of the Ministry of War. Then somehow, this Fang Yantai was passed down from generation to generation and stayed in the military yamen. It is said that such a small ancient inkstone, which is said to have been made for hundreds of years, does not know how many old men like Xinshin have been sent away. Xinshin heard two kinds of footsteps that were all too familiar outside the house, recovered, walked around the desk and walked towards a chair. After stepping over the threshold and entering the house, the Minister of Works when air asked directly, did he not nod to help contact Beiju Luzhou Sanlang Temple and the Luoma Heliu clan? Xinshin smiled and said, "The thief. How could it be so easy to nod?" Qingguosher is not stunned. After listening to a few good words, he happily patted his chest and agreed. The Minister of the Household, Mu Yan, asked, "What about you Guizhong and Yanghu Blessed Land, who also refused?" Xinshin said, "It's half and half." Jiang Shangzhen said that it doesn't work for him to talk to you Guizhong. The implication is that we should find someone to talk to ourselves. But their Jiang's Cloud Cave Blessed Land, there is no problem. They are very willing to sit down with our Big Li and have a good talk about specific cooperation matters. Because you, the god of wealth in charge of money bags, was not present, Jiang Shangzhen did not say that he would come forward, but only said that the person in charge of the Jiang family would go for a while to the capital. Speaking of this, Xinshin couldn't help laughing and said, "We can't just because a great sword immortal who was a suzerain and who has outstanding military exploits, sits at the door of the imperial study today and doesn't say a word, we can't take him back." Thing. When Air nodded and said, "It's Jiang Shangzhen after all." Now that they have all come, the three ministers, one host and two guests, talked about some important military affairs. When and Mu Yan got up and left, the old Shangshu didn't get up. The old man sat on the chair, closed his eyes and rested for a moment, then slowly got up and walked to the bookshelf. There were a few thin and colorful books hidden there, which were very inconspicuous. Dip in saliva and open a page. The book describes the woman's appearance and demeanor, which is a must. Some of the blank descriptions that do not seem to be very fragrant are even more aftertaste. For example, the current old xianxia is reading the length of writing about a cloud and rain, the lover has fled over the wall, the woman in the boudoir is dressing in the mirror, and the mirror is in the mirror. There is a beautiful woman, her face is pink, her temples are sweaty and she seems to be in pain. The woman stretches out her hand and lightly rubs her chest, frowning slightly as if resentful and ashamed. This book, which is difficult to weight for elegance, was first spread from Beiju Luzhou to the Xinjia ferry in Aquarius. The one who compiled this novel was Jiang Shangzhen, who made waves in Beiju Luzhou with the cultivation base of Jindan. The old man turned a few more pages before putting the book back on the shelf. In fact, the question Jiang Shangzhen asked earlier was, "What's the point of being an official?" The old minister of the military department of Delhi did not give a serious answer. Not to mention other continents and other countries, but it is very interesting to say that we are officials in the Delhi court, especially in the Ministry of War. The old man leaned his back against the bookshelf, dazed. Shin the word hongi. According to the explanation of words in some poems and articles as well as Jinshi, the words shen and shen can actually be interchanged. Since the surname is Shen and the name is Shun, a character is naturally needed to complement the name. Shun Chen's eyes shifted, looking towards the door. Back then, in a fit of anger, Shin Chen, who was an official in the Ministry of Personnel at the time, had a political disagreement with the national teacher Cui Yu, and Shin Chen resigned directly from the office. Fuck the countryman. Later, Cui Yu personally brought Shin Chen to the Ministry of Military Affairs. Before crossing the threshold and entering the house, Cui Yu stopped and asked Shin Chen if he had thought about it. "You, a literati who has never touched a knife or wore armor, it is not easy to get a firm seat in this room." Shin Chen said that as long as Cui Guoshe promised me one thing, those warriors would come into the house with knives and chop me at every turn, and I would have the ability to manage the military department of a country well. It is also a national teacher of Dali, or a brother from the same sect. Qin Pingan is young and he can't compare to his brother Cui Yu, it's a bit far behind. Compared with Howren embroidered tiger, is he bullying people? Shit, who made you Qin Pingan sit on that chair today? No one else. If you don't compare you with Cui Yu, it's hard to compare with me. But having said that, when I saw him today, the old man's impression of Qin Pingan was not bad, so he certainly wouldn't be disappointed. The old man walked to the desk, stopped suddenly, rubbed his eyes and squinted to make sure he didn't have dizziness. Because at some point on the table, there was an extra square stamp with a qilong button. Shin Chen walked over slowly, not in a hurry to pick up the seal, put his hands behind him and looked down at it, as if the inscription were divided into the side part. The title is 2 sentences. The sages have their words, and the scholars must be brave and persevering. The history books do not contain a word, and the above generals seal the prince. There is one more sentence. Dali Qin Pingan was engraved in the style of an ancient general and taught by Mr. Hong Yi. Shinshin smiled and nodded, not bad. The old man was not surprised. The old xianxia has read countless books in his life and there are many good words and sentences in the book, but these few sentences are not bad. Flattery? How can it be called flattery? It must be good words. Then Shinshin picked up the seal and looked at the content of the inscription. For a moment the old man was speechless for a long time. He gently put it down, straightened it a little and was silent for a long time. In the end he was willing to put the seal back on the table. He glanced at the door and then at the seat. Cui Yu and Qin Pingan are worthy of being brothers from the same school. Shin Shun, who led a country's military department as a scholar, didn't have time to ask a certain question with the national teacher Cui Yu. How am I doing as the Minister of War? And the 7-character seal on the bottom of the paragraph is like an answer given in place of Cui Yu. The scholar here is a hero. You're tuning in to the Sword Dance in the Vast Sky YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.